Fantastic. I think we're live now. Miroslav, if you could give me a quick nod to confirm you can hear me. Yes? Very good. Thank you very much. Well, thank you and welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Tom Bauman and I co-chair the Climate Change Coalition along with Masamba Toe of the UN Climate Change Secretariat. Today's event is in recognition of the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, as well as the 3rd anniversary of the Climate Change Coalition. I'm very excited that today's event includes so many distinguished speakers that are advancing digital solutions to help the climate goals of the Paris Agreement be achieved. I'll start off with a brief introduction about the Climate Change Coalition and then welcome today's speakers for the first hour, highlighting their important aspects of work in regards to digital innovations, as well as other innovations across dimensions of financial, social governance, and so on, in terms of helping to build the data and digital infrastructure for climate action empowerment and to help scale global climate action, generally speaking. One moment, please, as I switch over to my presentation. Okay, so the Climate Change Coalition is an open, global, multi-stakeholder initiative to support collaboration among both members and stakeholders, more broadly speaking, to advance blockchain, including distributed ledger technology, of course, and related digital solutions. So IoT, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, and so on, to help mobilize climate finance and enhance measurement, reporting, verification, or MRV for short, to help scale climate actions for both mitigation and climate adaptation, so covering the scope of climate change activities. The coalition was founded in December 2017 during the One Planet Summit in cooperation with the UN Climate Change Secretariat and 12 founding organizations, many of them here with us today. We started by developing a charter of shared principles and values to guide our member-driven collaboration. I emphasize that the coalition is not a top-down driven organization. Rather, we are decentralized and distributed around the world. We are technology neutral, but we are committed to both the sustainability of the digital technologies that we're using to advance sustainability. We also collaborate with many related initiatives. In addition to the UNFCCC, we're also collaborating with the World Bank, as well as being engaged with several technology communities and ecosystems. So for example, the Linux Foundation via Hyperledger, the Interwork Alliance, as well as INATBA, the International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications. Several of these partners are among today's speakers, and one of our goals is to bridge the climate community to the tech community to help build capacity and cooperation. To that goal, 1 year ago, so we're also celebrating a first anniversary, during COP25, the coalition helped to launch the Digital Innovation Community within the UNFCCC process. We'll hear more from that or about that from Miroslav Polzer in addition to some of his related initiatives during his presentation. We also engage, again, with stakeholders beyond the coalition members and partners through various events and with online resources. You can see some up on the slide. So LinkedIn groups, Google Maps, YouTube channels, Facebook accounts, and so on. And so to help expand our reach and engage beyond organizational members to individuals who are interested from a variety of perspectives, whether that's research or to learn or to get involved. And the digital community is particularly diverse. You can see by this map that geographically, many regions around the country, around the globe, but also very diverse in terms of the different sectors, agriculture, industry, transportation, energy, so on. And that makes for a very dynamic, interesting, and challenging network to work together. And so just very briefly, last slide here in terms of quick overview. Certainly, there's a whole range of climate and digital activities and solutions. And certainly for over 15 years, there's been an array of digital solutions being used in the climate space. So emission factor databases, greenhouse gas emissions inventory software, online calculators, knowledge hubs and communities, registries and exchanges are online. There's life cycle inventory and life cycle analysis software. SEMS, or continuous emissions monitoring systems, have been around for a very long time. Remote sensing, and so much more. So there's a huge, rich background of digital solutions, and these tools have been very helpful in advancing action on climate. But there are additional new technologies that are emerging and being incorporated. And so those, of course, are the digital sensors, the artificial intelligence, drones, and so on, to go beyond making things smarter. And there's, of course, smart buildings, smart agriculture, smart infrastructure, smart mobility, and so on. And they're all evolving together to overcome or advance capabilities such as data accessibility and democratization, with the aims of empowering more stakeholders to participate more actively and contribute towards scaling climate actions. And indeed, that's really the overall theme of this event, is collaborating to build the data and digital infrastructure for empowering climate action at all levels of stakeholders. And so by last count, in fact, lost count, there's well over 1,000 blockchain solutions for sustainability, broadly speaking, around the world. A couple of the major sectors that we see, renewable power and land use, are very active in terms of deploying digital solutions, including blockchain, but certainly also carbon credits in terms of tracking, trading with registries, exchanges, and so on. And many of the speakers today are going to cover these topics. Other major areas for distributed ledger technology, climate finance, digital finance, supply chains, blockchain and supply chain are very well aligned. So low carbon supply chains and resilient supply chains. And actually another major area that is actually relatively under addressed is, in terms of deploying digital solutions, is climate adaptation, but certainly a very important area to leverage digital solutions to advance climate actions in that space. And so in addition to all of those sort of sectors and applications, the digital solutions also are very useful in terms of digital MRV, again, the measurement, reporting, and verification that combines Internet of Things, digital sensors, of course, the blockchain, smart contracts, and more. And that is to provide high quality, high utility data with high assurance, and to improve the cohesiveness of that data as it's all being accounted for and rolled up for nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, as well as other holistic approaches for climate action accounting. And so over the next 2 hours, many of our speakers will cover these issues. I hope everyone enjoys the presentations that we've lined up today. I think they're going to be very, let's see if I get this to go. very informative. I'm looking forward to this chance. Although I've been connected to many of the speakers today for years, we don't always get to stay in touch as much as I would like to, at least. So I'm looking forward to these updates myself. And so thank you all for joining the 3rd anniversary event today for the Climate Change Coalition. And I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, Julie Mopin. And Julie, I'm just going to exit my presentation and go back to the overall agenda for the event. Just to offer a quick introduction to Julie. Julie is Chief Investment Officer at Axion Holding, as well as Chair of the Board at INAPA. Julie also is a member of the advisory board of the IOTA Foundation. Julie's an expert in international economic law, experimental governance, and much more. So thank you, Julie, for joining us today. And I will transfer to you the mic, I hope successfully.
Great. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Tom? Perfect. So I don't have a presentation to share my screen today, so you're just going to have to look at my mug here, unfortunately. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you very much, Tom, for the invitation. And, you know, it's amazing to look back and see how much has happened in the last 3 years since the Climate Change Coalition launched. Tom and I met quite a few years ago in the early days of, I think, his exploration of blockchain and distributed ledger applications for energy and carbon and climate change management. And I put on a workshop in Canada, as it happened, that he was good enough to attend in connection with a think tank there that was looking at some of those issues back in the days when I was an academic, looking at how these new technologies might change the world. And then, of course, I took the leap and made the jump over to the tech side myself after having gotten integrally involved with a number of the different early projects in the space. So it's been amazing to see the growth and the continued momentum behind the Climate Change Coalition. Congratulations on 3 years. And we're just getting started. I know there's a lot more to come. So I was asked to speak today a little bit about, just to say a few words in brief introduction about harnessing the potential of blockchain technology with good governance and multi-stakeholder collaboration from the EU perspective. So I think I'm just going to basically break that down into a couple of general remarks, first about good governance, and then about multi-stakeholderism, and then finally about sort of EU approaches or EU perspectives, because a lot of the speakers who are coming up after me will speak in more detail about specific projects with specific examples of how these things can be translated into an actual technological platform, and what the results are that we're seeing so far and what we still need to improve on. So first of all, what do we mean when we say good governance? So as Tom mentioned, I'm an international law and international economics expert by background and by training. Good governance is one of those things that you write tomes and tomes of academic articles about. What does it mean? And specifically, if we think about what does it mean in a blockchain context, I would submit that there are basically 2 ways of looking at good governance that we've seen evolve so far in the space. Back when I first got into the blockchain space in 2012, there was a very thin notion of what good governance meant. And it consisted of 3 basic ingredients. First, good governance meant that the technology itself, the way that it operated, the blockchain or the distributed ledger, provided for simple transparency of information. Information is transparent, everybody can see it. That's good because it enables accountability. Transparency is good for all kinds of things. Unless, of course, you want privacy, but that's a different discussion. First of all, transparency of information. Second of all, that the technology is provably fair in the sense of being a deterministic or algorithmic or non-manipulable, predictable way of transferring resources or data, so that you know that there's no central entity who can come in and change it, or who can override the decisions of the agreed set of rules according to which everybody's operating. And then third and finally, that it's open to everyone who wants to participate. Now, from the beginning, this notion of openness was admittedly limited, because you had to have pretty high technical capacity in order to be able to participate in the early days of blockchain, because it was all computer code and computer speak, and not really very accessible to the layperson or to people outside of engineering computer science. But nevertheless, in theory, if you could learn, if you could figure out how to speak the language, you were able to participate. And that's what the notion of good governance was in the early days of blockchain. Bitcoin, Ethereum, the first projects to come out of the gates. That's how they viewed good governance. And then later on, we added a second set or layer of projects that came about that wanted to add additionally to those three basic rules, maybe a slightly thicker but still relatively thin definition of good governance, by adding in verifiable authenticity of the data. So there was a lot of discussion about, well, how do you know that the data that's being put onto the blockchain is actually true? It's an old garbage in, garbage out problem in computer science. If you put bad stuff in, you're going to get bad results out. So innovators started working on how can we integrate the Internet of Things and smart devices, smart meters, things that are automatically measuring sensors, things that are automatically measuring information that can then be directly loaded onto a blockchain or distributed ledger, and saved and transmitted in a tamper-proof way. This was a big step forward, and I don't want to minimize this, because we do need reliable data in order to make energy markets work, in order to make climate reduction, emissions reduction market works. We have to be able to agree on what the baseline is, and to be able to measure it accurately, and ideally in real time, so that we can know whether particular measures that we're taking as a society are increasing or decreasing our energy consumption, our emissions, whatever. So, some examples of that, early examples of experimentation projects were peer-to-peer energy grids. Maybe Alexi, who's going to speak later, might say a little bit about that. Smart mobility and smart city solutions, self-charging cars and other electric mobility solutions, smart emissions monitoring. For example, the project that Climate Check and Tom might say a bit more about this is currently running with IOTA to monitor landfill gas emissions in Chile, and make those verifiable and tamper-proof, so that you can then do something with the data, whether from an evaluation perspective or from a market-making perspective. And then I want to mention one example that's maybe sort of hot off the presses, and probably has hit the radar of most of you. Just last week, we saw the launch of eForce, where Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak and others, jumped into the game and have come out with this new token for essentially securitizing energy savings, to try and find a way to get more money into the energy efficiency improvement projects market, by making it possible for more people to then share the benefits of the savings that would be realized by industry on reducing their energy costs, to make it easier to finance those projects, basically. Very curious to see what happens with that project and how it goes. But those are examples of things that really needed a slightly thicker version of good governance. But still, it's pretty thin. You have these basics, almost technological definitions of good governance. It's good, but it's not good enough, in my view. So thicker, what would a thicker definition of good governance in blockchain look like? Well, one could look at broad-based participation. Here, should we look at the number of users? Should we look at the diversity of the people who are using the network? Should we look at its representativeness, whether that's from a regional perspective around the world or socioeconomic perspective or any other kind of representativeness we could think of? Broad-based participation is definitely one staple of good governance, typically when we think of good governance in the political or legal sense. The second thing is whether there's a high level of consumer or end user confidence. Do people trust in the thing? And this is ironic because, as Tom mentioned, I'm the chair of the board for the International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications. So there we have that word trust, right in the name of the association. And there was a big debate about this amongst the original founders of it. A lot of people didn't like that word being in there. I still have very mixed feelings about it myself, because at the end of the day, trust is one of those things that's bestowed upon you. You can't put a stamp on something and say just because it's in this person is a member or this organization is a member of a NAPA, they're trusted. At the end of the day, the members who are developing their projects will be trusted or not trusted on the basis of their performance and what they actually deliver and how reliable they are and how user-friendly they are and all of that. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg kind of a problem. But trust is definitely something, high level of confidence anyway, amongst the users is something that belongs in the bucket of good governance. Third, demonstrable social benefits. And I think this is really where the rubber is going to start to hit the road in the next 5 years of the evolution of these projects. We need to see, and we need to do a good job measuring what is the actual carbon reduction that one can or is generating on the basis of creating these new markets. Is there actually increased access to finance for energy saving projects or for smart mobility or whatever it is that where we talk about the financing gap, the climate financing gap, is this financing gap being reduced by these projects? And then fourth and last but not least, desirable distributive outcomes belong, in my view, into the definition of good governance. People in the blockchain space like to talk about democratizing markets, bringing finance downstream to the end user, empowering the end user, et cetera. And things like disrupting existing power structures, removing unnecessary middlemen. And this is a tricky one because distributive outcomes are essentially the desirability of distributed outcomes is essentially a political decision, and different societies reach that consensus in different places or come to a different agreement about how evenly distributed resources should be and how evenly they should not. My take so far on this is we're moving in the right direction, but we haven't gone far enough. And the definition of good governance should remain a moving target, where good should always mean better than what we have right now. And therefore, I think that we really need to continue to challenge ourselves to improve and improve and improve. And that's the great thing about these technologies, is they're very much built around the idea of iterative innovation. And that makes these sort of micro improvements forward and analysis at each step. Is it better or is it worse? Possible. And then finally, just a couple of words on multi-stakeholder. There are lots of different types of multi-stakeholder collaborations. In the DLT context, we have some large overarching formal alliances, some formal alliances of the very powerful, large, well-funded industry organizations with big voices, throw a lot of money around and get meetings with important policymakers and things like that behind closed doors often. And then we have smaller, not so powerful associations, associations that represent startup firms or environmental coalitions like the Climate Change Coalition or others. And then, of course, also we have, and this is very important not to lose sight of, informal cooperation of the many. Very, very bottom-up innovation. The whole notion of originally behind the blockchain revolution, decentralized bottom-up innovation where a person with a monitor in any part of the world can do something. Every programmer an innovator, and every user a change agent, making decisions that allocate their resources in the way that that fits with their views. And there are a lot of people who have very strong views, especially the youth today, about the climate. And they need to be empowered to vote with their feet, vote with their resources, etc. And that's what's exciting about these technologies. And so from my perspective, as someone coming from the sort of technology side of things, it's extremely important not to lose sight of the individual person with the monitor somewhere who can tap into these technologies in order to effectuate change. Because in the aggregate, that's how we make climate change action work. It's in the aggregate, and it's the small little drops that add up to the ocean. So above all, as with good governance, we need to keep reinventing and adding to the definition of who is a stakeholder all over the world at every level. What's unique about the EU perspective on this is the EU has a long, some might say tortured experience with cross-border, multi-level, public-private, in short, complicated governance. And as a result, concomitantly, the EU has an institutional structure and a culture that supports this. Cooperation, finding compromise, figuring out how to share burdens across different levels of government and at the international level, taking responsibility by stepping up, regulating, legislating where needed, but also taking a step back and leaving things to others when things are actually better regulated at the closest level to the consumer or the end user. That's the principle of subsidiarity in EU law. Very important. It's slow, it's political, but it does generate increased buy-in in the long run amongst the public to have these kinds of processes for deciding how you use technologies. And the open question at the end of the day is, does it generate better results? And I think we have a really exciting opportunity right now, because sometimes, these slow, deliberative compromise processes do generate wonderful results. And sometimes we often think, wow, maybe command and control is really the more efficient way to go. And the reason I say it's an exciting time is because China is really throwing down the gauntlet for all of us these days. Was that one of my children in the background? It's just after school time here. China is really throwing down the gauntlet for all of us here in the international community to figure out, can we really demonstrate that open governance, collaborative governance, decentralized, a combination of bottom-up and coordinated, and with leadership and with individual aggregated actions, can we demonstrate that it can achieve as much, if not more, than top-down centralized approaches when it comes to combating climate change, improving our energy structures, etc. So I'm going to leave it there, and thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Julie. I look forward already to the next opportunity to engage with you, because you cover such a huge number of issues of massive importance. I couldn't agree more about good governance, which I would refer to as the non-technical half of these solutions, and really with the goal, as you pointed out, of empowering stakeholders more effectively. And I think that is not just in the design and deployment of the digital solutions, but many of the governance rules that automate these solutions to really multiply or amplify their ability to affect the change and the scale of it that we need to see happen, particularly this decade, to turn the corner, and of course going forward. So I want to say thank you very much again for your speech. I think you helped lay the basis for talking further on the specifics of building the digital and data innovation infrastructure, going beyond just simply the digital portion of that, to affect the empowerment that we'd like to enable for stakeholders on climate action. I understand you need to leave us early, so if you sign off, I hope we will be able to follow up with you afterwards when it's more possible. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thank you. Then moving to, I'm next happy to introduce Catherine Foster, who is a global executive advisor on emerging technologies in general, which is a big area, and as it relates to climate sustainable development goals, ESG, the environment, social, and governance as well. Catherine advises on strategic collaboration, systems innovation, and entrepreneurship. Catherine is Executive Strategic Officer at the Open Earth Foundation and has previously worked with World Bank as a Canadian diplomat, yay, another Canadian, and lead on business development and innovation at Climate Kick in the EU, and much, much more. Simply look at Catherine's LinkedIn profile. It's almost an education in itself. So thanks, Catherine, for joining us today, and I give you now the mic.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to be here. And this discussion is really timely. And I just want to follow up directly on the governance issues that Julie has introduced from a new perspective, and speak to some of the initiatives that I've been working on for the last few years since having to relocate to Washington, D.C. I basically been here for 3.5 years, and in that time have started a few startups, but also worked, as you said, with the World Bank and with the Green Digital Finance Alliance, which was established by the UN and Ant Financial. And in that capacity served as a knowledge partner for the UN Secretary General Task Force on digital financing of the SDGs. And I'm now building out a paper, or actually just completed the drafts for the extension of that task force dialogue on the big fintech and SDG impacts. And although it's not blockchain and climate specific, I think some of the issues that we uncovered and examined, and the findings of my reports actually have huge implications for regulation, self-regulation, governance, etc., that will have implications for a lot of the work we're doing across the CCC. So first, I just want to speak to about the UN Secretary General Task Force, which was actually envisioned in 2019 and launched to look at harnessing digitalization in accelerating finance of the SDGs. And it did bring together leaders from across finance, technology, policy, regulation, and international development, and engaged in dozens of countries. I'm just going to start my timer so that I remember my timing here. Engaged in dozens of countries with hundreds of financial institutions, governments, and regulations, civil society organizations, think tanks, expert groups, including many members of the CCC. And the basic findings were, there were a number of interim reports, but the final report was launched in August 2020, and they clustered the findings and recommendations around 3 core pillars, including the catalytic opportunities, the sustainable digital ecosystem, and the inclusive international governance. And I think I'm not going to speak directly into that, but I want to speak to some of the initiatives and work that we brought into that dialogue that I think have that are really important, and we're actually part of those recommendations. And what I can actually give you the link to the reports as well, and to the videos. And the recommendations are actually then envisioned for 7 groups of actors, including fintech companies, member states, policy members, financial institutions, civil society, the UN system, development institutions, and development finance organizations. What's interesting in this entire dialogue is that the emerging tech companies, SMEs, startups, and organizations were sort of clustered under that notion of fintech companies. And throughout the process, what we were finding from my perspective at the Green Digital Finance Alliance was that there was this assumption that emerging tech was coming from the finance sector. And in doing so, and in many of the initiatives that we had, there was sort of sidelining of the understanding of the emerging tech emerging for SDGs and climate impact. The other part was that it was a very positive narrative about how emerging tech is going to unleash financing of individuals so that they will boost their economies and therefore boost sustainable development. So what we did with the Green Digital Finance Alliance that was brought in was to do a landscape analysis of a couple of countries. This was actually supposed to initially be sort of a metric system, but what we found was that data wasn't available. And again, that the scope in each of those countries, the characteristics of each country in terms of the emerging technology and SDG finance was quite immature. And that also had to do with the fact that most regulators, most innovation communities were quite separate. So we had emerging tech for SDGs on the one hand, we had green finance sort of building out over here, and then we had fintech emerging out of the finance industry without really integrating with those other two. And what we found in the landscape report was actually, because data wasn't available, that about the actual maturation process, that this was actually the core recognition and recommendation, that we need to better integrate those three pieces of the puzzle. Another part, another element of the work with the Green Digital Finance Alliance was building out the toolbox or the report on digital financing or green bonds, digital green bonds. And again, here, the finding was that up till now, there was no end-to-end fully integrated emerging tech green bond. Of course, we had solutions at each part of the value chain, but nothing yet end-to-end. And that is part of the recommendation, is to actually let's build out a pilot to prove that it's possible, but also to pave the way for the integration of the great work on MRV, as well as distribution, as well as the financing side of things and allocations. And then also the democratization of digital finance to allow other investors to participate. Another part of the GDFA was to look at, of course, with Ant Financial being one of our partners, was to look at the capacity to build that up into Africa and other areas. So what is really interesting here, again, is that assumption that the Ant Financial app, which saw, I think, 300 million users initially, planting 100 million trees, but they were quite separate systems, right? So we had the financial app that did carbon footprint tracking, which then built a virtual tree or sapling, then got planted in real time. But there was not a real integration of the technology across those core pillars, because it was philanthropic funding that went to the planting of those trees. It wasn't related to carbon credits or RECs or any other type of climate finance. So again, we had this fragmentation of the solution space. So this is basically a very simplified understanding of where the landscape fits when you're looking from the sort of outside perspective of the UN and fintech solution space, is that we do see glimpses of the emerging tech for SDGs, supply chain, MRV, asset tracking, climate finance, etc. And then we have the green financial products, but no end-to-end emerging tech innovation, but again, fragmentation within that. And then fintech for the unbanked, so that notion of financial access with this notion of a positive narrative, with the only implications being around data. The next part of this journey then became the extension of the Digital Task Force into a new dialogue, which is funded by the Swiss and Kenyan government, and sort of through a collaboration with UNDP and UNCDF. And I'm basically drafting the first section of papers around big fintechs and their impacts on sustainable development. And again, here, taking a broader perspective, looking at beyond the financial inclusion narrative and that revolution narrative, to look at the real impacts. And again, it comes down to data availability and scoping mechanisms. So I employed with my colleague Sophie Blackhouse, who you may know, who you of course know, and Martin Bos from Holland. I brought them into the team, and we built out the first, actually all of the papers that are now in the review process. And the overall intention here from the funders in the UN was to explore the ways that the big fintechs might develop, but also impede on the developing countries' ability to drive SDGs. And what we did was look from a diverse range of big fintechs and sort of expand upon the categorization of finance and big fintechs, as well as the impacts. And the first thing that I found was that the categorization of big fintech itself is a little bit artificial, because by trying to slot them in for the regulators, we're actually losing sight of their overall implications and impacts, and the fact that a lot of these actors do not come from the financial space, but are having massive impacts, both positive and negative, across the finance and the SDG space. And the business models are becoming so complex, and they are integrating so many products and services across a wide range of sectors. So there's vertical integration and horizontal expansion. And so I employed a couple of tools, an SDG, ESG lens, and looked at 3 tiers of impact, as well as landscape mechanism. And I was able to show that basically a number of SDGs that were not really on the radar were actually quite present. So of course we knew about reducing inequalities, financial inclusion, but we did find huge impacts on climate action, on environment, on justice and strong institutions, on gender, life on land. So a lot of the environmental impacts, as well as on partnerships. So this was actually quite a big finding. And the other part of the report focuses on a need to look at this from different tiers or different perspectives. So most governance frameworks look at direct service offerings. We examined it from 3 tiers: the direct service offerings from the services, operations, and infrastructure, but also from the value chain, the business models, and that integration, because that's where the real implications are. And what we're finding, just as an example, that right now there's a lot of regulatory attention on Facebook for various reasons, including for its third-party content, which it up until now has not taken responsibility for in terms of governance. The same could be said for Amazon and its marketplace and e-commerce platform, because half of the goods and services do not register on their radar because it's third party. So while Amazon, for example, is harnessing digital technology and providing funding for climate innovation, half of its operations, half of the services and goods that are distributed are actually going through a back door, where we're seeing actual closing down of any traceability. So again, there's this real tension in the big fintech space. And what we're seeing there is then this need to bring the big fintechs as well as the other actors together to talk about governance, because we cannot govern from our current perspective, from a sectoral perspective and a regional perspective. A lot of the impacts from the US big fintechs are actually in the LDCs, the least developed countries, where no governance mechanisms can actually come into play. So this actually will have implications, both positive and negative, for those of us in the CCC in terms of the governance implications, new regulations that might come forward, new ways of governing together, new funding opportunities, as well as being wary of some of the funding that is coming out of the big fintechs and the implications for climate and SDGs, and that need to, again, just integrate those 3 tracks. So I'm just going to leave it there. Hopefully I haven't gone too far over time, and I'm open to questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Catherine. and keeping us on track with time as well. Again, so much rich information to try to absorb. You had mentioned that you'll be able to share links to some videos and reports, and certainly love to share that with both the Climate Change Coalition membership and more broadly the stakeholder community. We're going to try to return to Q&A discussion later on, if that's okay. And thanks again for that great presentation. Next, I'm happy to introduce Susan David Kerrick. Susan works at the World Bank Group. Hi, Susan.
Hi there.
Most recently with their Innovation Blockchain Lab, and now with the Carbon Markets and Innovation Group. I first met Susan at the Coalition's first member meeting, which was 2.5 years ago. And I'd like to again express my gratitude to both Susan and the World Bank Group for all of their collaborative support throughout that time. It's certainly been a huge benefit to the Coalition. So thank you very much, Susan, for joining us today. And I give you now the mic and the share screen, I hope.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. Tom, if you could just confirm, that would be terrific. Okay.
Governing together.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you today about the Climate Warehouse project that the World Bank has been doing. And we have moved into our second phase of this. I'll give you a little bit.
I hope everyone can hear me. Oh, I think you're back now, Susan.
Oh, you can't. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Add your,
okay.
Your screen as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we've been collaborating with different organizations and amongst teams within the World Bank to look at how blockchain technology can underpin Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And this is our second phase of prototyping that we're doing to try to see how this would work and how to bring partners involved to co-create and co-develop this idea further. So why are we doing this? From a policy context, the Paris Agreement enables parties to link decentralized climate markets from the bottom up. There are centralized registries that exist under the UNFCCC and voluntary standards, and several countries are also developing their own national registries. The draft text of 6.2 indicates that countries have to have access to a registry, or they can utilize a central registry to be implemented by the UNFCCC. The agreement does not elaborate how these different systems should connect together and how carbon assets could be tracked. So going forward, international climate markets such as CORSIA or Article 6 will likely require a different type of registry system to communicate, and another for compliance purposes, including the avoidance of double counting. So the World Bank is experimenting with the Climate Warehouse to look at how utilizing blockchain or other decentralized technologies could reduce fragmentation within the market. So we want to see how establishing a peer-to-peer connection between decentralized registries could be used to track mitigation outcomes or the assets that are traded between registries. And then also see if we can start building a common language that registries can use to be able to talk with each other and to build this bottom-up climate market. So where we see the concept of the Climate Warehouse fitting in with this, on the top level of here, number 1, we see country level or institutional databases. So these are registries that hold, within a country, that hold information about their projects, MRV, their data about climate. And then a subset of that data is in their country registry or their international standards registries to track the mitigation outcomes or climate assets between registries. The warehouse we see as a structure that these different registry systems can surface information to. Ideally, we are looking at real-time integration between these registry systems with a blockchain node so that everybody has a copy of the information, and we establish a peer-to-peer connection between the different registry systems to surface publicly available information in one place. So I mentioned we were simulating. So we have built out a prototype, and we are in the midst of doing this currently. So we have 3 different phases of the simulation. We have a pre-simulation phase, which requires collaborators who are going to be using our prototype to sign a collaboration agreement. We've been working with partners to obtain feedback on our technical artifacts, and we're preparing different registry systems to integrate with the warehouse. In the December through March timeframe, we're going to be carrying out the simulation in different cohorts with partners. So we'll have check-in meetings, discuss any issues, lessons, and feedback on the prototype as they use the system and talk to us about what kind of data they would like to see there, how a system such as the warehouse should work if it was to become operationalized. And then post-simulation, we'll be following up with questionnaires and additional meetings with partners to put together the lessons learned from the simulation activities, and we'll be making that report that comes out of this publicly available for everybody to learn from. From a partner participation standpoint, we are trying to link up national government registries, or if they don't have one, we have built into part of our solution what we're calling an auxiliary app, which sort of acts as a quasi-registry so that they can learn how it would work and how their own registry would potentially integrate with the climate warehouse. We're also reaching out to some subnational or intergovernmental bodies to participate and share data, and also the independent standards organizations. We also have 2 groups of observers. So we've also invited transaction operators to view the simulation activities, and then observers from other multilateral development banks, UNFCCC, and other academics to provide feedback on what they're viewing. So where the warehouse fits into the ecosystem. So this slide here shows our long-term vision of how we see these different components fitting in together. So on the left hand of this slide, you see the data sources. These are the different data sources for climate work. And this information is stored in a multitude of systems that are composed of a multitude of technology components in the middle. So the country data management system would be the main system of the country. It could be multiple smaller applications, but it holds their policies, programs, project activities, and carbon assets. And then we see the registries on the top of the screen as holding a subset of that information. What would be needed for the accounting, the tracking of the units, for usage, and also for trade. The climate warehouse, as you can see from this picture, talks with the independent standard registries or country transaction registry systems to share data. Market infrastructures in the middle would be trading platforms, and we see them also as a user of the climate warehouse to do due diligence checks on assets that could be traded from their system. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you see the data usages, so the reports that could come out of this ecosystem. UNFCCC reporting, we could imagine that a system such as the climate warehouse could support compliance reporting on behalf of a country. So I'm going to show you a little bit of how this works with the carbon asset development process. And these are the processes that we're going to try to simulate with partners in using the climate warehouse. So you have a project owner that prepares project documents. And these project documents are validated from an independent auditor. And then the information from that project is submitted to a country admin who stores that information in their country data management system. So the project is then registered with an independent standard. And so that information is provided to the registry admin. And the publicly available information that matches the metadata in the climate warehouse would also be surfaced to the climate warehouse. So a country might also decide, no, I'm not going to use an independent standard registry. I'm going to have my own registry system. So the same process would occur, that they would put a subset of their information into the country transaction registry, and that information would be surfaced to the climate warehouse. If the project owner determines that a correspondent adjustment would be needed, they'll request a letter of authorization from that country to be able to do this. The country would provide that letter of authorization to the project owner, and information from that letter would also be saved in their country data management system and also in their registry, and the metadata from that letter to the climate warehouse, so that we can see what the assets would be authorized to use for. So these letters of authorization can also be provided to standards registry. It's not exclusive to a country transaction registry. And the process would be the same, that the letter would be submitted to the project owner and then surfaced to the independent standard registry and to the climate warehouse. Once the project is operational, an independent verification validates the reductions or removals, and the units are issued. So the admin for the independent standard in this case would issue units to that account or mitigation outcomes. And then the accounting of those mitigation outcomes, how many were actually issued, would also be surfaced to the warehouse. So if we look at the process of how these units would be exchanged or traded, we have the independent standard admin who could status these mitigation outcomes as for sale. And to do that, then they would move those units to the account of an exchange. Since this is an accounting change between two different accounts, we would want to see this accounting change also in the warehouse, that these units have changed owner. We're not particularly interested in the actual owner, like the person, but we are interested that they changed hands. And then the admin could mark the units as being for sale on an exchange. Of course, we would want to see that in the warehouse because we also see the warehouse as a place to bring buyers and sellers together so that buyers could potentially go through and find what they're looking for and what kind of assets would match their programs. The exchange could use the climate warehouse to do any due diligence that they need to do on those assets and their history. A buyer, like I just said, could navigate the climate warehouse and look for units that they're interested in purchasing. In our example here, that buyers decided they're going to purchase assets from an exchange. So the exchange would provide the buyer with necessary documentation, but the accounting adjustments still have to be made in the registry systems. So the registry admin would reflect that these units were transferred, and we would see this updated in the climate warehouse. And if that buyer happened to be a country, that country admin, we would also see that the units have been issued in their account. And we would see this accounting change reflected in the climate warehouse so that we can see that the transaction occurred. The country then, as part of our process, would mark the intent to make a corresponding adjustment for those units. So we see the possibility of them doing this with some type of statusing within their country data management system, which is also reflected in their registry and also in the warehouse. Since we have all of this information in the climate warehouse, we feel the country could use the reporting interface of the warehouse to do their annual reports to the Article 6 database. And then our last step in this process is the country would complete their corresponding adjustment for the units that were transferred. And we would be able to see this within the warehouse as well, so that we can see that the full life cycle of the process has been completed. So I know I ran through that very fast, and I want to be conscientious of time. I'm going to very quickly show you the technology that we're using for this. We've decided to make this as simple as possible for our partners. So we are using Kaleido so that we don't have to worry about the whole setup of a node. This is blockchain as a service to make it as easy as possible for our partners. You can also see in this diagram that we are using an auxiliary app. So some of our partners are in the works of creating their registry systems and don't have an operational one yet. Through the usage of an auxiliary app, we can upload data to the auxiliary app and use that as sort of a quasi-registry for this testing period so that they can try out these processes, see how it would work without using their system, and still see how real-time integration would work. There's actually a lot of engineering within the auxiliary app. We are using a Docker container to host all of the information within the auxiliary app to make it easy to install in a partner's environment. And then we're uploading the information into that, and then the blocker or the auxiliary app then connects directly to a node within the Climate Warehouse blockchain. And I'll leave it at that and welcome any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. And I, for one, want to say thank goodness you have the animation built in as well, because that really helps to aid in following and understanding what, at least at first glance, looks complicated. But I know that you're making it more streamlined, efficient, and effective. So thanks for that overall presentation. We are getting some questions and comments, but I'm going to reserve those till after, if that's okay. And people obviously interested in knowing when the pilot ends, if you'll continue, and so on. So we'll circle back to that afterwards. Hopefully that works for you as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Then very quickly, if I may now move next to Michael Schmitz. Thank you, Michael, for joining us at what I believe is an early hour for you. I'll just give a quick introduction. Michael is a global environmental leader and social impact entrepreneur. Among his roles, CEO of Blue Vista and principal of Carbon Accountable, advancing carbon data ecosystems to drive engagement and action. Michael's also a fellow at Codex Stanford and leads the Climate Data Policy Initiative, as well as being a member of the Codex blockchain group. I'm very interested to learn more about your work with Codex, and Mike, I hand over to you the controls.
Great, and thanks. It's truly an honor and really, frankly, super interesting to be part of the panel in this event, and I have followed from a distance the work of the Climate Change Coalition. Let me jump into it. I know we have a lot of content throughout the 2 hours to get through. Again, thank you for the introduction, Tom. I'm talking today as project lead from the Climate Data Policy Initiative, which is at Stanford University's Codex Center for Legal Informatics. The policy initiative is seeking specifically to identify and highlight effective global climate data policy and regulation, and to test and contribute to initiatives seeking to build a global open climate data ecosystem built upon digital technologies like blockchain, DLT, IoT, and AI. We're particularly focused on two types of climate data policy: compliance-related policy, specifically mandatory emissions pollution reporting, and incentive-related policy that enables behavior change strategies. For today, I want to just focus on a key gap that we see, and we're really, we're going to be driving a number of initiatives around in the current climate data landscape, which is a barrier to broad scaling of blockchain-related climate solutions, and then identify what action should be taken to address this gap. So frankly, we think that there's a critical gap and a critical blocker to achieving the goals that we're all seeking to achieve through this coalition and through other efforts, and that the provision of universally accessible, comprehensive climate emissions data is the critical next step that needs to be addressed to really tackle the climate crisis at scale and at pace. Because frankly, real enforceable climate accountability is simply not possible without it. What public and policymakers need is a carbon accounting requirement for significant public and private institutions, so that individuals and institutions can make informed decisions and take action to reduce emissions at the scale required to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. I will skip through my usual litany, but I will say that a couple top lines on this. The climate movement itself needs to be able to target climate action scientifically and with precision, and needs to use the best available database technologies to do so. Second, an effective global climate regime cannot be built without transparency, and public access to climate emissions from enterprises and governments is particularly important. Third, as I mentioned, enforcement cannot be effective without real data. Climate pollutants, whether CO2, methane, or other CO2 equivalents, are invisible and odorless and require complete data reporting to ensure full and accurate capture and tracking of emissions. And fourth, effective markets will only be built with transparent data regimes. This has been the case throughout many markets throughout the world, and the weaknesses of the existing offset markets and the lack of transparency as a critical design defect is something that needs to be addressed. So let me share an assessment of where things are today. Organizations like the one I helped work with at ICLEI, the C4, the R20 series, and CDP have led a voluntary disclosure movement for the past 30 years and have achieved great success. Very real important gains have been made advancing the global climate conversation with decision makers, mayors, CEOs, and of course the parties to the convention themselves. However, it's our assessment that the accelerating pace of the climate emergency has outstripped the efficacy of a voluntary encouragement approach. This is largely a result of the limitations inherent in the approach and not the fault of the leaders working to increase these disclosures. Very real political pressures have been put on, including, for instance, the Tea Party in the US attacking local climate action efforts, even the simple reporting of climate emissions baseline inventories. In the private sector, voluntary patchwork reporting frameworks leave open the perceived or real threat that corporate competitors will take a low road and gain market share as a result. Plus, there are the shareholders that still solely seek profit maximization. These kind of headwinds are something that need to be addressed. However, it needs to be addressed now. In the race to address the climate crisis, in the words of renowned climate activist Bill McKibben, winning slowly is the same as losing. So we feel a new approach is required, particularly when it comes to private sector emissions, and to get a data-based climate accountability regime, we need to move on from the existing approach of voluntary reporting to one that requires full transparency, detailed accounting of carbon emissions from all large private sector sources, scopes 1 through 3. This is going to be a major challenge. The challenges are significant. I will leave it for another time to get into all of them, but it suffices to say that the most profitable corporations in the world, the likes of the Fortune 1000, account until they account for their entire carbon footprint. There's little hope that governments alone can reverse the climate crisis. So what is next and how do we address it? We believe that the achievement of near-term goal of comprehensive climate emissions reporting will require legislation and the implementation of a regulatory framework to ensure all parties fulfill their responsibilities to the public. Such legislation should be, at a minimum, requiring complete disclosure of carbon emissions data from public and large private companies, including, as I mentioned, scopes 1 through 3. This information needs to be communicated, and this is critically important, in a way that is easily understandable and actionable. Most regular folks, and for that matter, elected officials and policymakers, would have a difficult time parsing the details of a 10K report to the SEC. And yet that is often the outer limits of reporting requirements when they are enforced. Until we have clear, transparent, and broadly understandable information about climate pollution, we will not be able to act upon this information at the scale and pace required for the times. So to achieve a transparent climate data reporting regime that enables consumers and investors to make informed choices, it will take ultimately broad public engagement and action. Having said that, the growing breadth and depth of the climate movement, and particularly the inspiring generation of the inspiring leadership, of the next generation, I am very hopeful about the prospects for change. And I look forward to the conversation with my esteemed fellow panelists and others on this call. Thank you very much for the time and opportunity.
Thanks very much, Michael. Another super overview. Myself learning something new. We've only recently connected, and it just proves how rich and dynamic and quickly growing this space is. Julie early on mentioned Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak's new initiative in this space. And even though the coalition itself has around 230 organizational members, I think that's not even half, close to half of the initiatives that are happening out there. So these types of events are super beneficial to help continue that connection and collaborations going forward. So thanks again, Michael.
Thank you.
Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Nina Dokazov. Nina is head of project group for new economy and blockchain technologies at the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology in Slovenia, as well as being a UN ECE expert. Nice to see you. Nina is also involved with the European Blockchain Partnership. Thank you very much for making time to join us end of day, end of week in Europe. And I now give you the controls, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I have obviously some problem to share my screen, but I will try to do this anyhow. Okay, just a second. I hope it will work. No, it doesn't work. I will go through my presentation, but I'm sorry that I cannot share it within the screen.
Nina, please try again. I've made a change regarding the studio, so please try again.
Okay. No, I cannot. I cannot because it doesn't show.
But it is here. Sorry. It was here, sorry. But it disappeared again. Sorry.
No problem. I will just explain a little bit briefly. Maybe just to say that thank you for the introduction first. Now I would like to say a few words on what we are doing on the European level on blockchain and how we are going to address certain challenges that we are having with blockchain infrastructure in Europe.
Nina, could you please adjust your camera so that we can see you better? We see the ceiling primarily.
Yeah, thank you. The actions on the European level started more or less in 2018. You had before the colleague from INADBA, and INADBA was an organization also formed within the form of European Blockchain Partnership, which initiated INADBA as supporting organization and knowledge sharing organization here within European blockchain ecosystem. But it starts first with the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum, and with the signature of the declaration on blockchain, which was signed in April 2018, and it was signed by the certain number of member states. It was 23 member states at the beginning, and after that also it extended to not only member state of European Union, but also European Economic Area. And after that, it was in May 2018, the European Blockchain Partnership was created. European Blockchain Partnership is created from certain groups, but it functions as partnership of the countries, member states, and European Commission. And then we divided that European blockchain partnership into a policy group where European member states have their representatives, like I am for Slovenia. And then European blockchain services infrastructure. This is technical working group, and also 3 working groups, initial working groups for services. And those were, first was for digital identity. The second was within this one for digital diplomas on blockchain, and the last one from the package of first 3 was the notarization or the authentication group for development. The ECA, ECA is European Court of Auditors. They developed one project which was dedicated to tracing the payments from European budget for cohesion policy on blockchain, and those were 3 primary services that were implemented. The second thing was that we started to develop European blockchain services infrastructure. This is the infrastructure composed by nodes, which will be installed in member states and with a centralized node at the European Commission, and the nodes for running European blockchain infrastructure on the level of member states. This was a huge step forward because this was the first time that European Commission with the member states cooperated within development of that certain emerging or advanced technology infrastructures. The second very important thing was that it was the first actually the first step to get the cross-border interoperability. It is quite easier on the European level, as we have more or less the legislation that enables interoperable infrastructures. It's different between third countries because we do not have the same legislation, and we do not have. We are facing some limitations operating cross-border. I will mention later also the project that we are having on the EU on the level of UNCFACT. We have the project that is called UNCFACT Chain, and it is also addressing the cross-border interoperability infrastructure. But here we have 2-layer infrastructure. This is architecture. This is infrastructure layer and the service level layer. Within this interoperable cross-border infrastructure, we are developing the use cases that I mentioned before. And the first use case is self-sovereign identity use case. This is very important because it enables identity management in a digital world. It is based on decentralized identifiers, biometric, technical, and attributable, and decentralized identifiers, which are independent from central registries and from certifying authorities and identity enablers. The second thing is diplomas on blockchain, what I already mentioned. And the third is e-notarization or authentication. I'm really sorry I cannot share my screen because I have very nice pictures on this presentation. Also touching a bit Slovenian case, we started with building of the blockchain ecosystem in 2017. The first meetup we had on in June, there was more than 300 people. It was in a time when we had a hype of ICO projects, and many of them are still living. And Slovenia was one of the fifth, or one of the fifth countries that regarding the investments into the companies on the global level in 2017. But anyhow, we were facing also the challenges. The challenges were how to create a better and business-friendly environment to attract more investors, and also how to create the pool of knowledge, support, and of that accelerated development and implementation of new technologies. What was also the challenge for Europe and for Slovenia, the common regulation, how to create the better regulatory framework to respond to new technologies. And the challenges were started to be addressed with certain issues. So we launched the blockchain action plan in 2018. It was a kind of first strategy on the European level for blockchain technology. Then we were supporting blockchain ecosystems through launching that self-regulatory guidance on ICO. And what we did on the Ministry of Economy, we launched the call for project. It was quite a substantial amount, addressing different pillars of so-called smart specialization. And within this call, we had almost 64% of projects that were planning to use blockchain. The horizontal ones or one of the horizontal pillars was also energy efficiency and energy oriented projects. Talking about this, I have to say that on the European level now we are developing quite a strong policy orientation on Green Deal, and also very comprehensive supporting documents. It was said before, some of previous speakers was talking about digital finance and sustainable financing. We developed a whole regulation on not only to cover European Green Deal agreement, but taxonomy regulation on sustainable finance. And what is the purpose of this? It is the purpose of to define the taxonomy of the regulation on sustainable finance with the corresponding technical screening criteria. I hope that someday it will be able to put them also on blockchain. We are also talking about green bond standard. It was also mentioned before, green bond standard or green bonds initiative. And we have here the clear focus on NSHP. This is becoming a very strong standard as a non-significant harm principle. And within this significant harm principle, we are focusing on different sectors. We are focusing, for example, on agricultural sector. For example, one of the activities is the usability green claims. The other is forestry. also can be facilitated by traceability and so on. Then the restoration of wetlands. This is also very important area which is quite infected by climate change. Then a lot of attention is given to the transport sector. We had yesterday that blockchain in mass mobility event, and we could see that a lot of efforts also in blockchain are put on transport sector to trace, to have the that track records and to try to maybe synchronize the users and the others. Then we have issues in building sector, and we also have the issues in ICT research and development and other sectors. So these are more or less areas that are covered by that taxonomy regulation and with a strong do not significant harm. How to shape it within energy efficiency? What we are facing in Slovenia, that on the energy producer side or supply side, we are facing the challenges of that diversification or dispersion of small energy or alternative or renewable energy producers. There we have no large company to produce electricity on renewable energy or alternative energy, and there are still losses in the energy system. What are the for example, challenges on the side of demand? This is increase of energy efficiency of the companies that is strongly connected with the transformation of those companies, not only technological but also business transformation. And the structure of Slovenian economy is based on these energy intensive industries that are also the biggest employers. So we are facing with two quite strong challenges. We decided to go to take innovative approach, advanced system for smart grids, energy management concepts, integrated use of services, and to use advanced technologies, so sensoric systems, artificial intelligence with machine learning, and for sure blockchain with smart transactions, immutable data encryption, then resilient audit trail traceability. What are the challenges for blockchain here for possible integration of blockchain? First, here we have identification of stakeholders. A concept of self-sovereign identity for safe and secure treatment can be provided on blockchain. And this is why EBSI or European Blockchain Services Infrastructure can serve. And this is also how we can connect use cases run on European Blockchain Services Infrastructure also here for energy efficiency. The second thing I will finish in a second. The second challenge is the challenge of creation of appropriate ecosystem. Here we take that interoperability as a very useful tool for that ecosystem creation. raising awareness. This is a very high challenge for all users and also the others. For example, real-time information. This is very important for better management and synchronizations of stakeholders in energy transactions. And the payment system, we can use here smart contracts as a self-executive means of arrangements between users and providers of the energy and from renewable sources. I hope I was not too long. I think that Miroslav also wrote me the message that I'm very long, but in any case, I'm available for any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina. A very comprehensive and impressive explanation of everything that is happening in Slovenia. And speaking from my position in Canada, I certainly hope there's dialogues happening with Canadian government authorities, because I think there's a lot that you're doing that would be very informative and beneficial to what are, I think, in the works, but not as advanced as in Europe. So super impressive. Thanks again. We're at the 90-minute mark. So I first want to say thank you to all of our speakers so far, and to the audience as well that have been with us. I hope you've enjoyed all of the presentations. I certainly have. We have many more fantastic speakers lined up. And we'd like to modify the agenda so that we can accommodate speakers' availabilities. And so next in the agenda was planned a presentation about the ACEAT, Action Climate Empowerment, that Miroslav Polzer will be speaking to. He's agreed to put that towards the end of today's event. And likewise, we've been seeing the questions and responses happening in the chat windows. And so rather than use some precious time for verbally addressing them, everyone has agreed to also put that until later in the event if we have time to do so. And so I appreciate everyone's flexibility in that change to the original agenda. With that, and to continue to move through a super agenda of speakers, as we go into the second phase of the event, we're going to focus more on Climate Change Coalition member and partner activities. And even though we have 7 people on the screen, we actually have 9, and one that I would like to introduce first in this session, it's a bit of a quick change as well, is Jim Whitehouse. And Jim, just very quickly, if you permit me to give you an introduction, also another fellow Canadian, and Jim is Chief Environmental Officer and Chief Economist at Convergence.tech. Jim was previously a senior government official with the Government of Ontario in their Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Jim also leads the Climate Change Coalition's Canadian team and has been putting efforts into sharing feedback to various initiatives in terms of carbon market design, including most recently the Task Force for Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets. So Jim, thank you very much for joining us today, and I give you the controls.
Great, thank you. Can you confirm you can hear me? Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Tom, for the kind introduction. I'll try and be brief. I know we're on a very busy schedule. As Tom mentioned, I wanted to highlight an opportunity for coalition members to collaborate with the task force on scaling voluntary carbon markets. Indeed, there are a couple of members of the coalition that were already part of that task force. For those of you who may not know, it was launched in September of this year by the Institute of International Finance, which represents the global financial services industry. Its mandate was to look at ways to scale a voluntary carbon market and allow a lot of the member companies to meet their carbon reduction and net zero commitments. In November, it released a consultation document, and I'll share that momentarily on my screen. It may not be big enough, but I'll do my best. In it, it developed a blueprint for the carbon market and a roadmap to implementation. It outlined 17 recommendations organized around 6 different topics to help scale the voluntary carbon market. Those 6 topics involved carbon principles and attribute taxonomy, core carbon reference contracts, infrastructure, which is the area of interest to coalition members, related to trade, post-trade, financing, and data. The 4th area was the consensus on the legitimacy of offsetting. 5th is market integrity assurance. And then 6th was demand signals. Let me share my screen. Hopefully it works. Hopefully you can see that. So one of the key recommendations, it was actually recommendation 11, was to develop a digital...
We cannot see your screen.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll just go back to... I'll just speak live. People can find the document. I'll include it in the links after. One of the key recommendations that would be of interest to our membership is really around its recommendation for a digital project cycle, including real-time issuance for some project types. And this recommendation had 2 components: a shared data protocol that captures the necessary project data digitally and protects its integrity during processing and transfer. And then secondarily, an integrated process that allows verification entities to continuously monitor and validate the integrity of projects as they're developed, rather than at the end of the process. Again, the intent is to improve the speed, accuracy, integrity of the voluntary market to allow it to scale more rapidly. And it talked about the use of many of the digital technologies we've referred to now around satellite imaging, digital sensors, and DLT in particular. It acknowledged the potential for these technologies to reduce issuance costs, especially for smaller projects and for programs involving multiple parties and or related infrastructure. They noted it could reduce payment terms from 50 months to almost 6 weeks, and ultimately become the foundation for the interoperability of carbon markets. And Tom referred to my background in working to set up the Western Climate Initiative carbon market with California and Quebec, and that was always one of the intents, was to design a program that could link to other carbon markets. And these technologies can overcome some of the challenges around linking. Again, the technologies could improve claim credibility, data traceability and integrity, could allow for greater interoperability, accelerate credit issuance and cash flow per project developers, resolving some of the financing gaps that exist now. Thank you, Miroslav. Thank you for putting that up. So a couple of members of the Climate Change Coalition, again, were part of the actual task force, but a number of us wrote informally as part of the, in response to the consultation document. The comment period ended December 10th, and they plan to issue their final report in January. But the 2 things we asked for as part of our submission was to really build an effective collaboration and partnership with the Climate Change Coalition, to provide somehow some funding to promote a robust set of technology pilots that could eventually be scaled and incorporated into the voluntary carbon markets over time. And then really include relevant expertise in blockchain, DLT, AI, IoT as part of the consultation group to help develop that shared data protocol as these technologies evolve, and to incorporate changes into regular updates or the shared data protocol. So that's all I wanted to highlight. I will definitely, through Slack, keep people posted in terms of what response we get and what the next steps are. Again, I think this is a very significant opportunity for the Climate Change Coalition members, and I think we would serve the interests of the task force as well, noting the specific technologies. I'll stop there.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Jim, for making this event and sharing. I agree. That's a particularly important, relevant recommendation in that task force to bring in the digital tools and across the life cycle, the digital life cycle, and for all of the good reasons that you made. And if there are any things that you can share beyond the members Slack, because we are reaching out to the public, so whether that's in the LinkedIn group, the Facebook page, YouTube, and so on, where this video will be posted, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who would like to better understand how coalition members and from a digital perspective are relating to carbon market policymakers and so on.
Great, thank you.
Likewise, thanks very much, Jim.
Okay.
I'm very happy now to introduce our next speaker. Let me just scroll up my 5 pages of speaker introductions. Hi, Martin, nice to see you. So Martin Weinstein is a serial social entrepreneur and research scientist. Among many things, Martin is founder and executive director of the Open Earth Foundation, as well as founder and lead scientist of Yale Open Lab, and has been doing projects such as Open Solar, Open Climate. I have the pleasure, honor to co-chair along with Martin, the Hyperledger Climate Action and Accounting Special Interest Group, and I'll keep it short like that. So thank you, Martin, for joining us today, and I hand to you the controls.
Thank you, Tom, and may I add to your introduction, a big fan of the Climate Change Coalition. It's a pleasure to join all of you, a lot of friends and allies online today. I want to start by thanking you, Tom, and Miroslav, for doing such an amazing work and keeping us together, this community vibrant. I cannot think of a better coalition around climate in these days, as we have to work solidly on robust accounting, transparent information, and the power of technology to keep us honest on the Paris Agreement, where we're private actors, individual organizations, and national countries. So thank you very much again for all the efforts. I just quick updates that I probably can do about the year. A lot of our work at the Open Innovation Lab at Yale University has been creating a lot of momentum and traction. So we've been moving more to focus on commercial pilots and scaling a lot of those efforts, which has led to the launch of the Open Earth Foundation. I will post the link also soon after. So keep posted on some of the work that we're doing there, and invite you to collaborate as much as possible. It's been a pleasure to join the CCC as well from Open Earth. Also, the Hyperledger Climate Action SIG that launched this year has been picking up a little bit of momentum with different working groups, very specific, of course, on some of the tools from Hyperledger. We've talked early on today about DIDs, decentralized identifiers, and so there's a couple of working groups that to highlight, particularly on common trust layer and enterprise-grade solutions. So definitely an interesting opportunity for all CCC members to join the discussion there as well. Our biggest sort of event in the year where CCC community also participates is the Open Climate Collaborathon. The Open Climate Project was launched at the Yale Open Lab 2 years ago as an effort to explore, of course, the intersection of emerging tech and designing an integrated, digitally integrated climate accounting system. And the Collaborathon is the grassroots movement to really bring in a lot of the companies, organizations, and developers to work together. Let me see if I can share my screen real quick. And confirm, Miroslav, if you are able to see the screen. Here's the launch of the Open Earth Foundation. Feel free to check out some of the work. And this is the site for the Hyperledger Climate Action SIG. Again, I'll post the links there. But I wanted to just hone in a little bit on the concept of the Collaborathon, which is very much in the same ethos as the Climate Change Coalition. Bringing folks together through a very specific week to sprint on collaborating on blockchain and technology. Some of the highlights for this year, because this has already been in November, the 3rd instance of it, we had again a series of open climate dialogues that hosted in some sense a large online conference that you can check some of the speakers. But the couple of highlights are that at the tail end of this, also supported by Climate Change Coalition, we had some folks from our city presenting. We created lightning talks, and here we invited basically any any organization working on blockchain and climate to join and give just 5 minutes, and then help them match with other developers that are looking for projects to work on. So it's been acting as a marketplace that if you have a project on blockchain and climate and you're looking for volunteers, freelance developers, this has proven a good model, and we hope to continue doing that next year. So keep posted on some of our next efforts throughout the year, taking the road up to COP26. Final thing on highlight on the Collabothon is everything was also posted on YouTube. So if you missed some of the talks, I recommend checking out a lot of the recap, and particularly this video, Open Climate Demo, Nested Climate Accounting, is probably one of the last updates that I can make. This is the result of the work that we've been doing at the Yale Open Lab with a set of partners. And what we showcased in that video, and again, I'll post the link soon, is how do we integrate private sector accounting to public sector accounting? How do we integrate markets? And as we move assets between different jurisdictions, how can those be triggering automatic corresponding adjustments by leveraging a lot of bottom-up tech, including DIDs, verifiable credentials, and particularly leveraging the concept of the spatial web. So a spatial internet that can also help as an overarching climate internet as well. So very, very exciting on that technology development front. We're totally open for collaboration on all fronts, and look forward to exploring how to keep the dynamic very active with the CCC community. And I also want to highlight the importance of the digital innovation community for the UNFCCC process that was launched last year, because as we enter 2021, in the lead up to COP26 and negotiations, being able to have a very, very tight and cutting edge community helping the Secretariat in the process, and particularly informing the negotiation, is going to be critical. Thank you, Miroslav, for guiding us on that important initiative. And with that, I'll pass it along for the next speakers. My name is Martin. Please reach out. I'll post my email and look forward to hearing from you on the Slack.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Martin. That was just so packed full of great information, and thanks for agreeing to follow it up, not just in the Slack, but on LinkedIn. And for everyone in the audience, it was a perfect example of how the coalition links to other similar networks, but also doing, in some cases, whether it's research or developing the technology and various other tools. So in addition to the Open Climate Collabothon, which is can't miss it. I've enjoyed participating in one myself. The Hyperledger Climate Action and Accounting SIG is open to anyone that would like to get involved, and that's a great way to connect to work that Martin has just provided a quick overview. Thanks again, Martin. Now I'm happy to introduce colleagues from the other side of the globe, from Beijing, China. I'm happy to introduce Nick Manthe, Head of Research, and Neo Lin, CEO and founder of Synergy Blockchain Technologies. They are the climate change coalition leaders in the network in China and Asia Pacific. They also are very active in both the carbon markets and also in terms of digital solutions, including the ECO2 Ledger, which is a public blockchain network for both carbon trading and offsetting. So thank you very much, Nick and Neil, for hanging with us. I know it's quite late where you are in Beijing, so I will hand to you the controls.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for organizing this event. We're pretty used to late night events over here, given everything being online, so it's no problem from our end. I know it's short. Thank you, everyone. It's great to see everyone. And we'll just get right to it. And Nia will introduce the first half of our updates for our progress on this year, and I'll take up the second half of the presentation. Yeah. Can you see our screen okay?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's our pleasure to introduce Eco2 Ledger and how we combine the carbon trading with people together for the climate action. And we are happy to be here to talk about more our project progress. And we will share you the condition of our project and how we use blockchain application into the global carbon trading. And Eco2 Ledger is a public blockchain based on the substrate. We use the impulse consensus to operate the whole network. And people who hold the token of Eco2, they can join into the governments. And this whole network is designed for the individual who can use their personal carbon wallet to join into the carbon trading and the carbon neutrality. And they can use their personal wallet based on the blockchain, can buy, sell, and so wait a moment. You mean share the screen? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Bye. Okay. And we can use the ledger, and people who use the Eco2 Ledger, they can directly connect with their wallet and on blockchain. And the whole Eco2 Ledger is not only the network for the individual into the carbon trading. They can also they also need to spend the token in their wallet to offset the action, the CO2 emission caused by their action on the blockchain. So that means when they buy carbon credit or sell it or offsetting or join into the governments, they all need to doing the on-time offsetting on the blockchain network. That can reduce the climate impact by energy consumption on blockchain network. Our testnet is going to be released on the 10 days later, and our mainnet will be released on the next Q2. So people who want to join our testnet, you can scan the QR code and to sign up our testnet. And a public blockchain network will be not so successful without the community. So we use 3 ways to build up our community. First, 1 year ago, we launched My Carbon app for building up our online community. And use like My Carbon app, people can learn what is the climate change and how to use carbon credit for the trading and also for offsetting. Right now, overall, we reached 4,000 ton carbon credit offsetting by all individuals on My Carbon app. And for enhance their knowledge for climate change, we also held many educational events online to increase their knowledge. Our people in developing countries, they're not very well trained for those information. So the online educational event is very important for our community. And third, when the COVID-19 condition was easing in China, we take that chance to hold local convention, meeting, dialogue in many cities of China, and also hold a work zone event in China to consolidate our community, also communicate with them face by face.
Okay, and in terms of our activity within the CCC, we've previously done live broadcasts. We did a broadcast in June that had several CCC members. The screenshot over on the right side of the screen is from that event. We had about 1,500 viewers from China that were watching that event streamed live. There was some pretty active conversation during that live stream as well. You can see the questions on the right side of the screen again, such as what is the CCC? the Chinese community welcomes you. China's committed to carbon neutrality. These kinds of conversations were stimulated by the event. We're also streaming the event right now, this current event, to our viewers in China, and we have several thousand watching right now as well. And we're happy to do this in the future for future events. We would also like to do an event with Asia Pacific members, and we'll be in touch about that next year. We're going to organize an Asia Pacific WeChat group for those that want to participate in that. Just reach out to us, and we're happy to get you involved in that. We've previously also done some translation services for the CCC and for members. The screenshots in the middle of the screen are from, I believe it's Evercity's SDG Finance Bulletin. And we're happy to do any kind of translation services for CCC members. Just send us your materials, and we're happy to put those out there in Chinese. We also promoted this event in Jinse Taijing, which is basically like mainland Chinese CoinDesk. And if you see this slide here, we published this last night, and I believe it's about at 49,000 viewers now. So you can see that this is actually a decent viewership for an article of this size. I think if you had like a hot topic like DeFi or the recent Ethereum 2.0 launch, you probably have like 80,000 or 90,000 viewers in the first 24 hours. So given the topic, I think this is a great viewership for that. Go ahead, next slide. And in terms of our other activity that we've been doing here in Beijing, we're working on a UNEP, a UNEP report for a case study on ECO2 ledger. We joined IETA this year. We're also working with a task force member for benchmarking, a task force member based in Beijing, and that is using our carbon credits as a carbon credit company. We're hoping to use ECO2 ledger for that when possible, but for right now, it's just supplying credits for that. We're also forming local partnerships in Beijing and in Hong Kong. We've had some businesses that have been asking us about carbon neutrality, and some that want to purchase offsets. And some of them even want to visit our reforestation sites in China, and we're getting that set up for next year, hopefully by the springtime. We're also putting together a package with a consulting ESG reporting and consulting group in Hong Kong, Alaya Consulting, and we're trying to combine this ESG reporting and auditing and together with the offsets, so there's a package and make that traceable. We would like to use ECO2 Ledger for that. Our partner Alaya is also interested in using ECO2 Ledger for that, and we're hoping to do that after our mainnet is launched. Just briefly about our carbon trading activities. It's been a good year for us. We've added a new project to our portfolio, a project down in Hubei, an IFM project. We have 4 others in mainland China, 2 in Inner Mongolia, 1 in He, and 1 in Jiangxi province. We've actually tripled sales this year, which caught us by surprise, and we're hoping to continue this into next year and leverage our success in the offset market and use that with our blockchain development. And we welcome any CCC members who are involved in carbon offsetting to get in touch. We would love to work with you and find ways to work together. And then the last thing that we have is our WeChat group for Asia Pacific CCC members. And if you are based in Asia Pacific and want to join, you're free to scan this QR code to join our WeChat group. We're looking forward to finding ways that we can work together and hosting an event next year for Asia Pacific members. We're also excited to announce that we have interest in a new member for the CCC. Yes. Neo, if you want to say briefly.
Yeah, the Bamboo Carbon Research Center, based by Zhejiang Agricultural Forestry University, they would like to join the CCC and hope to bring the technology and their methodology into the coalition. They hope that they can work with everyone in the group, and they want to learn more and also contribute what they have from their science and technology.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. Another amazing presentation, and I just can't help myself but start by saying we need to do this more often. Thanks so much for everything that you've been doing. Am I already a member of the WeChat group? If not, please send me an invite because I know we're connected. And then also congratulations on all your successes, and for new stakeholders to the Climate Change Coalition. Also want to express my gratitude to Synergy Blockchain for all of their efforts in supporting our communications, like translations into Chinese of websites, publications, and then on the communications as well. That's incredibly appreciated, and would like to again express my my thanks for everything that you've done.
No problem.
Thank you.
We're happy to.
I hope you stay with us. As we continue to move through this completely packed agenda, if we still have Xiaochen with us, I would invite him to take the mic, and I'll just very briefly introduce him because we had him originally as our anchor speaker, but we've run up against the end of our scheduled time, so we're going to reorder that. So hi, Xiaochen. I just want to say that for the audience, you are a FinTech Top 100 influencer, senior executive for impact investing in digital finance, SDGs, ESG, and so on. You lead the FinTech for Good network, another example of how the coalition links with other major networks. And with that, I know that you're pressed for time. I'll simply say thank you and hand you the controls.
Thank you, Tom and Mira and everyone who is just making CCC a network which is really working for everyone. And I cannot believe it's already the 3rd year anniversary, and it's it's such a great network, and CCC has been really instrumental in bringing blockchain into the climate change community, and I'm extremely happy I'm part of this. And as of today, that I want to share a few things. And in the whole blockchain, the climate change related discussion, and there's so many exciting things happening every day. And so just to name a few where that we are working on. And number one is that new actors who the climate change community should really start develop a strategy. How to engage with, that is the central banks. And it's very clear that, with the launch of potential CBDC, and, central banks will have the vehicle to just intervene and, using CBDC to just, mobilize citizens to participate in climate change related activities and drive their investment or consumption into climate change friendly manner. So I think CBDC is really a very exciting vehicle where that climate change community should just start looking at how to engage central banks and also participate in the central bank digital currency related discussion, where that to just put a climate change angle within the whole CBDC design. As of now, that's according to IMF data, around 47. That data was in November. 47 central banks who are working on that, and we just in the past few months that we organized a few central bank digital currency forum, and we got more than 20 central banks who joined us, and we provide a central CBDC Academy to 9 central banks, and currently that we are in the process to provide CBDC related training to a few more central bank, and our systematic training will be out from next year. And definitely we want to also using the training to bring the climate change conversation into the central bank digital currency related discussion. So we want to engage with the CCC community and the CCC leadership and see, how we can just, make this as a pillar where in the future that's, having the central banks to just contribute more into the climate change related conversation. The next work that I want to share with you is around the housing sector. As everyone knows that housing contributes greatly to the climate mitigation potential, and there that interestingly that we still just build a house that's we used 100 years ago, while all the other sectors are changing dramatically. That housing sector, the change is really slow. And where that we also see that blockchain add a great value to the housing sector and can make housing affordable, eco-friendly, and we have tons of examples. Just 6 months ago, we started to just building the sustainable housing task force, and currently we have around 11 task force members from leading organizations. We're working on bringing blockchain into the housing sector, and we organized the 5 roundtable and a few. We have a sustainable housing block. We also established a sustainable housing, a blockchain for sustainable housing repository, where that's interestingly, when we started working on this, and we thought probably we'll find 50 or 100 innovations, but actually from this database we already have more than 500 innovations, which are innovators are using blockchain to just really transform the housing value chain. No matter we talk about the title, we talk about tokenization, we talk about using added liquidity and remove the middleman and reduce cost from the housing value chain. And many exciting blockchain-based housing solutions are out right there. But we also did quite a number of interviews with those innovators, and we find the number one challenge is that the mainstream housing, either housing authority or the housing developer, they don't know about blockchain-based solution. And a lot of innovators don't have access to them. So then we plan to in next year to launch the Sustainable Housing Accelerator, really trying to address that market gap. And hopefully that's again that we can working with the CCC community and to bring more blockchain-based housing innovation to address or to make the housing affordable and eco-friendly. So that's the second piece I want to share. The third piece is as some of you have joined our Blockchain for Green Bond conference a few weeks ago, and interestingly that's no matter we talk about green climate fund and talking about other organization, including the many countries, and as Biden is just ready to share the bigger plan of the climate change agenda, which will happen in the U.S. under the Biden administration. And one of the key exciting confirmation is the carbon net zero deadline, and which is by 2050. And now that there are so many countries which already just announced the net zero deadline, and that's just gave a lot of push to the international community. Where is the money, and how can we just use green finance to just incentivize and invest in more green projects? And the blockchain-based green bond could be a very instrumental instrument in accelerating the process. Where that now that we are working with a few blockchain-based solution, we're also working with municipalities. We're working with alternative bond platform. We also work with the digital infrastructure provider, and try to just build this small ecosystem where that we can help different countries, cities to just really looking at how to use a blockchain to just make green bond issuance both cost effective and also real green. So in that, again, that the CCC community is very, very important in that conversation. And we have so many innovations which is happening. And I know that Alex is working on this. And I think you will just also enjoy his presentation. And with that, and I will end my part. Thank you very much. And if you want to learn more about our work, go to blockchainfrontier.org or go to fintechforgood.co or go to our YouTube site. We have so many videos out there. Next year, we'll just do a lot of educational work. In addition to the central bank work, we'll also provide training to the public and through university as well. And anyone who want to be part of our training program as a trainer or have something to offer, and feel free to just reach out. And again, thank you for CCC. Thank you for Tom, Miro, and everyone who just make it possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Xiaoqun. That was amazing. I wish I was in more frequent contact with you as well. Thanks for sharing those resources. We'll be sure that they're transmitted by posting them on all of the forum as well. Appreciate that you went a bit over time for your next meeting, so I should let you go and look forward to connect with you again soon.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Bye for now. I'm very happy next then to introduce Juan David Duran Hernandez, who is the innovation leader with Eco Registry. That's a blockchain registry system for carbon credits. Eco Registry is part of XM and ESA, based in Medellin, Colombia. Juan also co-leads the coalition's network in Latin America, which I believe is one of the most energetic collaborative networks within the coalition. Thanks very much, Juan, for joining us today, and I hand to you the controls.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you everybody to join us for this presentation. I will share my screen to see to have some presentation. Can you hear me fine? Okay, I suppose. I have some small presentation about the work that we have been doing in the coalition in Latin America. And here, just to provide some information of who we are, is ESA Group. ESA Group is a company that is around Latin America, and it reports in different sectors like energy transport, information and communication, road concessions, and real-time management, where we are actually XM here, down here, and we have developed two blockchain based registry systems, one for carbon offsetting and the other one for renewable energy certificates. And it's very interesting because actually our strategy is to provide solutions that help the fight against climate change. For example, Conexión Jaguar is a solution from ESA that helps the connection through the Jaguar corridor in Latin America. And we as XM are developing these systems that we believe are important to provide solutions in Latin America. EcoRegistry is a blockchain-based registry systems for carbon offsetting. And right now we have around 36 projects with a little bit around 18 million tons of CO2 registered. And we are working together a lot with Climate Trade in Spain to connect the registry system to their trading platform. It's already connected and online. So we have provided a solution for both customers to connect actually demand and supply from both ends. With Equilibri, we are all as well working together. They are also Climate Change Coalition members, and they are based in Italy. So we are working also together with them to connect both platforms so that the people in Italy also may access carbon offsets from Colombia or any other Latin American countries. And we're working also very tight with the Santiago Climate Exchange. They are not a Climate Change Coalition member, but we hope they will be. And in Chile, because we want to have the possibility for connection between different countries and work together to provide solutions around Latin America. This is the platform for renewable energy certificates that we have talked about. And I just want to also talk a little bit about some research that is being done. For example, this is a master thesis that is being developed here in Colombia about blockchain to avoid criminal activity, and especially how to implement an emissions trading system under blockchain technology and what are the benefits of that. We have encountered already two important benefits on that thesis. It's around the savings in the operation and the reduction against traditional platforms, as well as the risks that are reduced, like crimes or sale of carbon offsets that do not exist, or things like that. And also another publication from another university that tells us they have named it the Palgrave Handbook of Corporate Sustainability in the Digital Era. And they have a chapter around blockchain technology and what's its relevance through our targets to achieve our targets to 2030 agenda. And actually here, I think, Tom, here you're announced here, your name appears in the text in the chapter, and the Climate Change Coalition is mentioned as well as a group of people that are looking to bring this technology to provide transparency and to provide solutions that are available for the people and for the countries as well. And just at the end, I want to welcome a new member. They are called Blockchain X, and they're a community of blockchain developers and blockchain enthusiasts that help solve any I call them any challenge that could present blockchain technology or that could be addressed with blockchain technology. And there's a group or a community of people that are very enthusiastic on going into these solutions, and they are very active in Latin America as well, and we are welcoming them as well in our network in Latin America. That's actually everything I wanted to talk to you about, and you are all welcome to join us in our group.
Many thanks, Juan. That was perfectly executed. Unsurprisingly, I was a little bit shocked to see my name in that publication. Thanks for raising it. If you have a link, I'd love to see it. But your point on fraud mitigation is very well made. That's one of the core principles, or the 9 shared values and principles in the Climate Change Coalition Charter, is fraud mitigation. So that was very interesting to learn about. And I hope you share your presentation as well in the Climate Change Coalition Slacks to learn more about that. That's fantastic. Okay, well, moving along here, thanks again to everyone that has been keeping with us, speakers and the audience alike. And I am very happy now to introduce Amy Seidman. Hi, Amy. Nice to see you. Thanks for your patience as well. I just to offer a quick introduction here. So Amy is the founder of Noble Profit, a social venture hybrid, as well as creator of BFlow blockchain technology to track, verify, and manage sustainability information around business and finance. So SDGs, ESG, and climate, of course. So thanks very much, Amy, for joining us, and I hand you the controls.
Pleasure to be here. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, I hope that people can hear. I'm going to try to share a screen. First of all, I'm really excited about all of the progress that I'm seeing around everyone, and you know, the maturity of the projects and so on and so forth. Great. I'm glad that my screen is showing. Sorry, I'm creating a little bit of continuity there. So it's really exciting because I've been, you know, part of the Climate Change Coalition from the early days and just seeing the maturity of the work. So I just want to thank you, Tom, for holding the space for us and for all the work that you've been doing. And then, of course, Miro, amazing work. And also during COVID, I think it's easy for us to get pulled from our purpose and what we're doing with everything around it. So that being said, I'm going to give an update around BFlow. And there are some other invitations for Climate Change Coalition members and different programs that we can interface. And I'm really happy to see the dialogue around climate starting to work towards the SDGs, because that's really where we are in the sweet spot. So the vision of BFlow is around tracking, verifying, and reporting sustainability claims that relate to reputation and externality. So how do we tie carbon to the rest of the world and all of the different initiatives, and how do we separate the different actors from those who are using climate credits to greenwash really nefarious activities? And one of the parts of the vision really is about creating a meta connective knit tissue for the different projects. Many projects are going very deep, and it's really important, and that's the nascent projects and the early projects of the blockchain world. And energy is particularly, robust in terms of the work that's been done. But there's a lot out there that relates to climate that we don't even realize connects the dots, as well as the relationship. You could save a forest, but if you don't save the people who are living in it, you're going to have, as in El Salvador, where they burn the forest down, you're going to have a disconnect with the stewards of the forest and the relationships that we need to connect between the food systems, between the living conditions in the cities and the lives of different people around the world. So BFlow is looking to be a contributor to what I consider the great mycelium layer of the forest of the world that could help be a part of the connective tissue. And we're looking at this because there's a lot of greenwashing that's happening around things, and there's a lot of really great companies that are also leading the charge. 25% of the companies in the world are very committed and are doing transformational work. And those stories and all of that can really be inspirational for dispelling the myth and the argument that sustainability can cost more, and looking at how we reconfigure all of our systems. So we are using the Sustainable Development Goals as our anchor point within our system to help connect the dots between this information and look at how do we create reputation finance? How do we create reputation-based carbon credits? How do we start to look at the differences between companies? And we see the SDGs as a great connection point for that. And we have finished our MVP, which is exciting. So we have a working product around the SDGs, and we're working on layer 2 as well as a carbon verification system. So our next phase within this is to further refine our verification systems and open to all of the different work that different climate change coalition members are working on within their work, so that we can start to connect the dots and ensure interoperability within our system as well as any other system, because it's not about as much about us as in BFlow as it is about us in the world and how we can connect the dots with interoperability to be meaningful. Otherwise, you're just, a drop in the ocean. And the way that we're looking at it is, there's two sides, and how do we create a checks and balances of the system, which relates specifically to governance and to this idea of really tracking the reputation of people and actors and companies and organizations within. And a lot of organizations don't necessarily want that, where others are willing. So, it's kind of a sticky slope for us to kind of move along. But we see, and it's sticky because there's fear. And so how do we navigate and create an environment that can bring people together in alliances versus this polarity that we're experiencing? And thankfully, we're having, a change in our administration in the United States. So we're going to see a lot of change around, hopefully, the involvement of different actors within the United States. So on the right are what we consider, the main users of the system, the ones who have the accountability and the flow of resources, which are business, finance, institution, and governments. And on the left, we see are those who would hold the governance in the network and help drive the reputation around it. And those include academics, NGOs, experts, certifiers, machine learning. The way that we're going to connect the dots amongst this would be the verifiers, and having stewards around that verifier hold the governance of the system. So I was really interested to hear the earlier conversation on governance. And when we start to look at that, and we look at digital identity, holding reputation, the ability to create reputation finance, a commons area that everyone's sharing information, and then how do we kind of respect the public and private needs, and how do we have signal about slave labor, about environmental atrocities, about crime, about things that are untrue about different claims. And that's where we would see the black marks of the system come in. And we've modeled a number of different initiatives to look at how this relates of connecting the dots. And when you start to look at the role of commodities, the role of human beings and finance and corporations, there is a connection point with finance, not just with the offsets and the tracking around that, which I think, you know, is hard lifting, but I think it is the simpler part of the equation because you can track more easily an energy bit. But let's look at like how is finance working to maybe support some of the old paradigms. So we've also modeled Complicity and Destruction by Amazon Watch, which looks at financiers' roles in tearing down the rainforest. And the idea is that you would see a financer or a company, you know, or a government, and you would get to see their true picture. So while they might be putting $1 billion or $1 trillion into helping the environment, what are they doing that they need to divest from, and how do we create alliances to start to heal and solve, you know, the real issues that we're facing in the world that we don't have time. The other one is around food. Food is a very important topic. Food waste is one of the biggest climate contributors. And when we think about climate, a lot of our attention goes to things like energy and buildings, which are all really relevant and valid. But food is also a huge, huge part of it. And by changing the way that we produce food, we actually could solve a lot of the climate change issues. And by addressing food waste, we can also feed a lot of people. So we've done some use cases around that, as well as apparel. And how do we take organic fibers and llamas that are, you know, living in Peru on the top of a mountain and creating wonderful clothing, and marrying that with artisans and indigenous clothing has been, you know, a great thing. So just to kind of finish up and summarize, this all relates to reputation-based credits. And I wanted to invite the different organizations to be whatever projects that you have that you feel might fit in here, as well as some of the programming and nonprofits that you would hold a place of within this system as a verifier, as a contributor. So thank you so much for having me, and look forward to connecting again soon. I'm not sure how to stop my screen.
Thank you very much, Amy. I thought that was a fantastic presentation to relate climate to the bigger picture of SDGs and all of the issues just made. That's fantastic. I hope that presentation can be shared as well, because you did have to go through it quickly. Thank you very much in keeping the time, but there was a lot there that could definitely go over again. So thanks very much.
For having me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, our pleasure too. Next, I'm happy to introduce a fellow Canadian again, Joseph Pallant. Just a quick introduction. Joseph, nice to see you. Joseph's Director of Climate Innovation at EcoTrust Canada, a long-established NGO here, as well as being founder and executive director of the Blockchain for Climate Foundation. Joseph and I have known each other since at least 2005 during Carbon Markets 1.0, if I can affectionately call it that. And then over the last several years, cooperating on helping to create next generation climate markets. So with that brief introduction, thanks for joining us, Joseph, and I hand you the controls.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Miro, Alexei, everyone, very much. It's great to be here. It's great to see so many of you here speaking. And I just really want to express my gratitude to all of the folks that are working here at the intersection of blockchain and climate. You're delivering the tools that we know we've needed to help beat climate change. And you're creating tools that we could have never imagined in our wildest dreams. So that's what keeps me really excited about this space. And it's all thanks to all of you. So my name's Joseph Pallant, and Tom spoke about my roles at EcoTrust Canada and Blockchain for Climate Foundation. I'm also a team lead at the mitigation working group here at the Climate Change Coalition. The goal of the Climate Change Coalition's mitigation working group people broadly is to deploy blockchain, DLT, related emergent technologies to help mitigate and ultimately beat climate change. Ultimately, there are so many moving parts of climate mitigation work, and really it's reflected, these different pieces and the technological approach to these different pieces is really reflected in the breadth of work done by Climate Change Coalition members. So we have team members that are focused on remote sensing to continue to better understand climate change and the grave risks to our biosphere. We have people marshaling society towards good governance so that we can orient towards the global collaboration that's needed as we all are, part of this green dot planet Earth. And we all need to move together or we don't get there. People are working on registries to securely array mitigation outcomes from climate action. So be able to keep track of, store, save, and then further interoperate real factual data on this work that's being done. Next step is tokenization to precisely encapsulate and communicate and utilize and unitize, create units out of mitigation outcomes. And we see this as best done around climate into creating distinct 1 ton of CO2 equivalent units. Marketplaces connect capital with opportunities to reduce greenhouse gases wherever they occur. So this is where we get the onboarding and ingress of the resources necessary to build these systems and ultimately do the work on the ground. And really it's project developers doing that detailed breadth of the work to turn action into offset. This then connects to the communities, project owners, boots on the ground, who actually do the work of replanting forests, of protecting standing forests and managing them better, of capturing landfill gases, of improving efficiencies, of installing renewable energy. All of this is part of this network of this space and of the work that the CCC Mitigation Working Group are all working on. And really, out at one distal edge of this work that then, of course, injects all the way back up the line is the monitoring, reporting, and verification of these outcomes. We need this solid information on activity and outcome to be able to inform and make sure all these other levels are correct. And definitely a hat tip to Tom's work and recently announced progress on the digital MRV. Really excited for that to land. And as somebody who got to work with Tom 15 years ago, developing offset projects here in British Columbia, I know that he's the guy to build those kind of tools now into the digital realm. So really, to this point of the mitigation working group, mitigation is the tip of the spear. We can't beat climate change if we don't drastically reduce our emissions and increase removals of carbon dioxide. And so hat tip to everybody so deeply involved in that. I would love to briefly share about the work that our team is doing at EcoTrust Canada and the Blockchain for Climate Foundation. As many of you have already heard, our tagline often runs, we're putting Paris Agreement on the blockchain. That makes the appropriate amount of sense for bigger groups, for more within the tent, like folks here. We're building a platform that's designed to allow national parties to issue and exchange ITMOs, internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, really the carbon credit of the Paris Agreement, issue those onto the blockchain. Our approach is to use non-fungible tokens, and we're working on the Ethereum blockchain. These distinct 1 ton tokens will carry all of the pertinent ITMO data that you'd want to see on a carbon credit. And so we've really seen an opportunity here using the non-fungible token standard and modality to be able to pack all of this info onto each token so you can put them all in a pile, but then you can always disaggregate them and see the exact details between each component ton. So on our tokens, we're inking in the project name, the sectoral scope, country of issuance, because these will generally be issuances of tokens into the ITMO space, into the international realm, that have already been achieved at a national, subnational, or voluntary level. We are not undertaking the MRV. We are not an offset standard. We are linking, we become a place to issue this into a common playing ground of Article 6 trading, fundamentally. So we'll also have that genesis or original standard and serial number, so that each of the tokens issued onto our platform can always be tracked back to its origin. And then we're excited about connecting some of these mechanisms that people are talking about today to undertake more of those activities in that chain of custody of that carbon information. But we ourselves are working on biting off a very distinct, concise block. Last piece on those tokens, we're going to be including a link to off-chain documents, we call it, where you can have the project design document, the validation documents, the verification documents. So you have a 1-ton token that can move around easily, but you can always find all of its information at the click of a button. Our goal and why we chose this use case is to enable corresponding adjustments between countries under the Paris Agreement. We want to supplement, or potentially, if people are keen, replace existing legacy technology and really get to carbon trading under the Paris Agreement earlier than we otherwise could, due to the pace of negotiations and development of these tools. We're really excited to have made a lot of excellent progress this autumn with our development team. Deeply thankful, really excited. And we should have a minimum viable product, an MVP, live on the blockchain by the end of this year, where we can demo, or people can try out issuing and then exchanging their test BITMOs. We're calling these blockchain internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. So really excited about that, and crunch time on getting that out the door. So many brilliant people on this webinar, in the audience, working on next generation and climate and financial, climate tech and fintech. We believe many of these tools that are being explored today will become key components of the multilateral system arrayed to fight climate change. And our work on the BITMO platform to enable cross-border collaboration on investment and emission reductions under Paris Article 6. We're excited to have that be a part of it, and we're excited to be developing it amongst such fine company. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. That was a super informative update. Even though we're fellow Canadians and separated by about 4,000 kilometers, I might actually be closer to Miroslav in Austria. What you're working on is super important. I have tons of questions myself to follow up, like, for example, the World Bank Climate Warehouse seems to be something highly relevant, and among other reasons. And thank you as well for articulating the carbon mitigation value chain and how data and stakeholders, all of that needs to be well integrated and aligned for maximum scalability and results and so on. So I appreciate that you brought it all back down to that relatable step-by-step process. Great. Thank you as well.
Pleasure.
Then I am happy to introduce our penultimate, second last speaker today, often referenced by other speakers throughout the course of today's now over 2.5-hour event. So thanks everyone again who's staying with us. I'm introducing Alexei Shadrin. So he is managing partner of EverCity, which bridges climate finance with blockchain, AI, IoT, drones, Industry 4.0 technology. It's everything. He leads the coalition's activities regarding digital finance, which is a bit of a shorthand way for saying it, and he can elaborate, of course. Super prolific, active member of the Climate Change Coalition in terms of involvement in events, publications, team building. In fact, I want to say thanks again to you, Alexei, and your team for helping support this event. I think it's really been a huge help in making it a big success. So thanks for joining us and your patience, and I hand you now the controls.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Tom, for this warm introduction. And it's been already 3 years since we met with many of you in Bonn, and now look at us and look at the world, how it has changed, and how digital technologies have paved the way to the hearts and to the minds of various stakeholders and decision makers. And let me congratulate you all on the great work that we have completed throughout these 3 years. I think this was really wonderful. And Tom, Miroslav, Masamba, and many of you who joined the coalition and who are leading the way for the digital technologies to address climate and SDG issues. Hooray! Let me show you short slides, short deck with slides. Yeah, so I'm currently leading the Sustainable Finance Working Group at the Climate Change Coalition. And let me just share what we did this year within the group. So I think one of the good achievements that we made is the digital SDG finance bulletin that we issued in June. And that was a great attempt to unite all the knowledge and information about digital technologies and how they can foster SDG financing. It was supported by INATBA, Refinitiv, and also the Newlean and some other members who provided the Chinese translation. And this is a great start. We're working right now on the second issue, which will be dedicated to the green digital recovery. We all know that the European recovery package is enshrined with digital tools to foster green transition. And we are really interested how this will be done. So you will find this all in the new issue that will hopefully issue by the beginning of January. And also I invite you all to submit your use cases, whatever you want to showcase within this publication. You're strongly encouraged to send us this information so we can include it into the bulletin and circulate it. I think Climate Change Coalition really needs, the publications to share with the whole world. So the other event that was quite successful and was held during the New York Climate Week, that was this blockchain technology and digital finance for climate action empowerment event, co-hosted with IAI Glocha, also INATBA, and Cointelegraph, which became our media partner and helped us to provide a live stream. And this live stream was really watched by many, many people, thousands of Cointelegraph viewers and readers. And I think that it really contributed to the rise of popularity and outreach of the Climate Change Coalition. So absolutely, we need more of these events and maybe more concentrated workshops related to what we are doing, showcasing what we're doing, because we've also received a lot of feedbacks from participants answering the question, what are you most interested in? And there are still many, many people and stakeholders who really want to learn more about blockchain basics and how things work in blockchain. So I really think that the workshop format is something we need to do next year. And our final highlight for this year, we've been working since the beginning of the year, maybe even since last COP, when we met with Masamba, the co-chair of the Climate Change Coalition, and he raised a lot of concerns on the impact washing problem on the green bond market, and not only. So he told us that there are some problems, and we knew that already because I've been running the Russian Carbon Fund and Impact Fund since 2011, so I'm pretty familiar with all the problems, such as inaccurate impact measurement of green bonds, transparency issues, high costs of issuing a green bond because you need a lot of counterparts, intermediaries to be involved, and of course, lack of new tools that can really power the impact finance market and make it more accessible, democratize the market. So we came up with an idea to perform research work, POC, based on a feasibility study on SDG linked bond design. So how we can improve SDG linked bonds with blockchain, with all the monitoring tools that Tom mentioned previously. So we looked at many other issuances, including NL issuance for $2 billion US. Then we tried to get this logic from the market, from the financial side of that, from the impact monitoring and verification side of that, put it into the logic of smart contracts and code and then blockchain. So we did an R&D and we tried to design approaches to an open source blockchain protocol to enable transparent issuance of SDG-linked bonds and programmable issuance of SDG-linked bonds. And the next step was piloting the solution with the market players. We had a big solar power company with overall 1 gigawatt of installed capacity joining our pilot. So we used their data on impact and their financial data from the real power plant that has been in operation since several years. And we tested, so we did the customer development, we tested our assumptions. And of course, this could not be done with support could not have been done without support of the Climate Change Coalition and Web3 Foundation grants program, which supported us financially and technically, providing us with a solution with a blockchain solution that even that time had the feature of low carbon footprint consensus, verification of transactions. So it's really low carbon footprint and we're not creating another problem here, and providing interoperability, which is really needed in climate finance because we need to make sure there is no double accounting. We need to make sure that the impact has not been accounted for by various stakeholders and reported to their investors. So this technology really helps us to do that. And so we did the protocol, and it's already there on GitHub. You're invited to check it and provide some reviews, some amendments. I'm really looking forward to discussing that in more detail in January or February during some kind of a workshop or dedicated group meeting. And we're also, we joined the Luxembourg Blockchain Lab right now, and with the Ministry of Finance of Luxembourg, we want to pilot the protocol next year. And also we received approval from the ASEAN Secretariat to pilot this solution in Southeast Asia. And it's pretty for sure that we will do also this piloting in one of the ASEAN countries, maybe in Malaysia. So also whoever is interested in piloting it in Europe or in Asia, you are invited, and let's collaborate on that together. And also, I want to share you a really short video of how this works using EverCity platform. So I hope you, so let me just, for a couple of secs, just share my other screen, and you will see that the code is also deployed within the platform, and potentially it could be deployed into your solution. We can help you with that. So here we see the main page, the listing page, the marketplace. We can search for projects. Here we're looking at bonds. Of course, these are all examples because it's pretty new stuff, and also other assets that will be added further stages. There is a filter on SDGs and also the table, which is more familiar for the bond market. You can use EU taxonomy to look through and select the projects, the bonds that are applicable, and join the book. So then there is the workflow process, and it is divided into various tabs. Yeah, just let me show. Yeah. So there are the tabs, and we've divided the process of bond structuring into 5 parts, which is some general info about the company and bond, legal documents, finance documents, impact stuff and documents, and the issuance part finally. And for each part, we can have a separate auditor, separate verifier that checks the dedicated docs and doesn't see all the other sensitive information, for example. So in the impact tab, you add your impact baseline. How do you see your projects performing, like a solar power plant? You have a prognosis forecast, how it will perform, the output. And then goes the very important part where all the essential bond details are being put, and interest rate details and floating rate details as well. And it's a quite sophisticated system. I'm ready to show it within some other events on a workshop, how this all works. And then using blockchain, all the transactions are being recorded there. We also need a custodian to make sure the finance is making its way and the book is being fulfilled by the applications of investors. And then the finance is being executed. There is also the auditor that checks the tabs and uses his crypto signature. And once the booking is done, the bond is issued by the arranger of the issuance, because we expect the platform to be used not only by the issuers themselves, but also by arrangers. And you can see the bonds issued there. You can see its performance or how much of it has been booked so far, and many other things that I will be happy to show you next time when the solution will be a little bit more ready for the market. And as my final words, I would just emphasize that Climate Change Coalition is the best platform for collaboration, for discussions, for capacity building. And together, we are really making this change. I think we can be proud all together how we have changed the landscape of digital agenda in EU, in US, other continents, all members, together. And I'm very excited. I'm very proud to work along with you. And I think next year will be the groundbreaking year. We've been preparing this year. We've been hiding in our flats and so on. Next year we will go to the street. We will go to COP, and there we will succeed because we're such a great group, and we're doing a lot of great stuff together. And our strength is our unity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alexei, for the presentation overall. I was not expecting that demo, but boy, was that ever great that you did it. And then, of course, you made it into a teaser, so I can't wait to see the full event that you're planning, hopefully in the not too distant future, because that looked super amazing. So definitely let me know, because I want to participate and see that again. That was wonderful. Well, I have to say again, thanks to you and thanks to everyone. We're going to be entering our last presentation for today's event. It's been now almost 3 hours, and I'm in this zone of partly blown away by the amount of information, but wanting more at the same time. I don't know how much more my mind's going to take it, but I am nonetheless happy to introduce Miroslav Polzer, who is our Climate Change Coalition Strategic Director, as well as the leader of the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, or IAI GLACHA, based out of Austria. He is doing so many initiatives that I'm always love hearing about the updates, and the one that we're going to hear today is in collaboration with Talia Vogerbauer, I hope I pronounced her name properly, of the government of Austria about the ACEAT, Action for Climate Empowerment Project, and the digital innovation dimension. So really pulling together many of the points made today by all of the speakers. Miroslav, thanks for being so much of a major help in making this event happen and then helping to manage it over the last nearly 3 hours, and your flexibility in presenting now at this point during today. So you have control, sir.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thanks all Climate Change Coalition members who have been on the call today, and partners and experts. It's really a wonderful celebration of the 3rd anniversary of the Climate Change Coalition and the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. And my presentation is about a new Action for Climate Empowerment initiative that, from the Austrian Federal Ministry for Climate Action. I have to apologize, Tali Vogerbauer. She wanted to be with us. We've had several coordination calls to fine-tune the presentation, but then she has got a call for an emergency and needed to be there. So in the presentation, perhaps no, I'll talk about that later. So the challenge is all of society responding to a world in crisis. No need for further details here. Our Compass Global Communities framework for action is the United Nations with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement as a global goals system. But these global goals very often don't translate into local action and impact. And as has been said on the second slide, everyone needs to be engaged in responding to the climate crisis, because everyone is contributing with resource use decisions, with mobility decisions, financial resources allocation decisions, nutrition decisions. Every one of us is a driver of climate change, and therefore we need to work all together to get this problem addressed properly. And innovation is the key, really, to change the pathway of the world towards climate catastrophe. And there are 3 elements to this innovation that is needed. One is new thinking and cultural innovation. We need to make people aware that everyone needs to do his or her part. It starts with me and with my city, my local community, my company, and my region. And then there's a social innovation and public sector innovation dimension to this need for innovation. We need to cooperate better on local and global level and set up new coordination and incentive systems for the multi-stakeholder provision of global public goods. And the third element a third innovation component in which the Climate Change Coalition is particularly strong is this digital innovation part, including emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, IoT, Earth observation, mobile technologies. And these new technologies are a game changer. We have now totally new opportunities to find new forms for multi-stakeholder climate empowerment, climate action empowerment and incentivization. And here, for this topic of climate action empowerment, the UNFCCC, the United Nations process around the Framework Convention on Climate Change, has introduced the program ACE. It's Action for Climate Empowerment. It has been formulated already in Article 6 of the convention, UNFCCC convention, adopted in 1992. And it's also part of the Paris Agreement, Article 12. And it has the goal to empower all members of society to engage in climate action through its 6 elements. They are education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to information, and international cooperation. And here, particularly important topic is public participation. And next slide, we'll talk about it a little bit in more depth. And at the last COP25 in Madrid, there has been also a very strong recognition or paradigm shift from those who are handling these UN processes, that they need to reach out to non-party stakeholders, to non-state actors, and to get them engaged, to provide enabling frameworks, enabling conditions, incentives, and regulations that will provide meaningful and rewarding engagement opportunity for everyone. So this public participation is something that till now was not really the focus of the discussions of the UNFCCC, but it's very important that we really have the non-state actors engaged in action and impactful action, and to empower them to have this. And for this, there's now space for innovation leadership, and we are happy to have this innovation leadership in Austria. And particularly, it is led and driven, this innovation for ACE, strengthening of ACE and for rethinking ACE, and by Tali Wögerbauer. Tali is the national focal point for ACE in the Austrian Federal Ministry for Climate Action and an ACE ambassador for the UNFCCC. Guided and coordinated by Tali, there has been an ACE conference last year in Burgenland, in one of the provinces of Austria, where there has been adopted a Burgenland Declaration. And these new approaches, it says that the event highlighted the need to mobilize funding also at the local, national, and international levels to support the ACE agenda. And with the declaration, it mobilizes stakeholders to commit to climate action in their areas of influence by signing the Burgenland Declaration on Action for Climate Empowerment. And the next step of implementation of this ambition to strengthen ACE is now this ACE-AT project, which is initiated, funded, and coordinated by the Federal Ministry of the Republic of Austria for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation, and Technology, with the UN Climate Change Secretariat being the lead partner, and the non-party stakeholders, ECOS and ICLEI, as associated partners, and my organization IAI is the legal partner for ECOS in this arrangement, because ECOS is not a legal entity yet. And the aim of the project ACE-AT is a collaborative global effort towards strengthening action for climate empowerment within and especially also beyond the UNFCCC process. The goal is to empower all members of society to engage in climate action and to change the perception on ACE. We have several working areas, activity areas, with which the different partners play different roles. ECOS and IAI are leading the area ACE Action Area 3, and there we have the deliverables, a feasibility study and a business plan for a global ACE non-party stakeholder support structure and office, a resource mobilization innovation for ACE deliverable, and a digital global ACE platform concept development and pilots. And now here, where these here are the concrete deliverables and our timeline. I will not go into further details here, but here in this one, we can have a closer look. So the digital innovation dimension of ACE-AT, how can we harness the potential of digital innovation for multi-stakeholder climate empowerment? And in the output one, regarding the feasibility study and business plan for a global ACE non-party stakeholder support structure, it is such that there are many ideas, there are many feasibility studies, but they often are getting shelved, and it's not possible to implement them because of a lack of financial resources, a lack of buy-in of existing structures. But now with digital innovation, and also especially with the expertise that we have in the Climate Change Coalition, there is the possibility to introduce digital finance. Non-party stakeholders can be engaged in the funding of this ACE non-party stakeholder support structure. We can introduce mechanisms like voluntary carbon added tax, which could contribute to this funding, carbon footprint compensation payments, or even co-ownership. Blockchain technology enables fractional ownership, and such a structure could be perhaps even co-owned by global citizens, non-party stakeholders. And then there are new approaches and tools for climate action capacity building, especially also in developing countries. We need to overcome the digital divide and really bring the technology and the solutions also to places like Africa, remote places of Africa. Blockchain-based new mechanisms for coordination and incentivization of collaborative action for public goods, which is then also in more detail explained there in the Digital Global ACE platform, or it is going to be materialized and implemented in the platform. The second deliverable is on resource mobilization innovation for ACE. We have there 2 events as our deliverable, but in addition to that, we are now also planning to introduce tools, initiatives, and results at the COP26. And these tools will be around citizen-centric digital finance, gamification with digital collectibles and crypto stamps. And we will see how far we will come also with the topic of digital green bonds, as we have EverCity with its solutions and expertise at hand. And the third output of ACE80 is this Digital Global ACE platform, which, if it works well, is a big project. And the Climate Change Coalition has this data and digital innovation infrastructure and ecosystem building ideas around D2I2, which can help really to make this initiative work, and bringing in expertise in the fields of digital measurement, reporting, verification, global registries, and many more. So, and the key really to unlocking the potentials of digital innovation for multi-stakeholder climate action empowerment is people and organizations. And here I'm quite happy that my organization is a bridge builder between the world of the digital innovation leaders from the Climate Change Coalition and those who have expertise, who have the networks to the people. And this is the education, communication, and outreach stakeholders community, which, and our organization has been a co-founder of both organizations, and I'm happy and proud to be strategic director of the Climate Change Coalition and member of the steering committee of ECOS, which makes it much easier to implement this. Another background, which how to make it easier for the ACE80 project to benefit from our expertise and in the field of multi-stakeholder empowerment for climate action, especially youth empowerment for climate action, is that we are working already since years on the multi-stakeholder partnership Glotcher with the 3 pillars: culture, technology, and organization. If you Google Glotcher, #Glotcher, you will find several sources, resources with further information. And our vision with Glotcher is that there will be an individual climate action. So all this talk that we are having and this big systems building that we are having, it will be boiled down to everyone, every global citizen holding in his or her hands a climate action app, which will have also gamification components, and we are working in this field, also in the context of the European Climate Pact, which is one of the pillars of the European Green Deal. We will have an event in the context of the Climate Pact launch on the 16th next week in the afternoon. More details on social media. And our second vision is, so on the one hand, everyone has digital tool in the hands. And on the other hand, there is a global digital innovation ecosystem connecting people and solutions. We will not go there into details, but the main message is that individual solutions, individual siloed apps are not on the scale that is needed to function, to really address the climate crisis properly. We need to have interoperability, cross-border operability, and the right regulations, standards, and an ecosystem of technological and non-technological infrastructure. Digital identity management, also very important. Digital finance, smart contracts, collective decision-making for trusted and accountable multi-stakeholder climate action. And with my organization, IAI, with Climate Change Coalition, with partners like Open Climate Collaborator, EverCity, and many more, we have developed already a lot of expertise and solution mosaic pieces that we will now bring to the table and towards the member states and the UNFCCC process with the ACE-AT project's digital platform dimension. And so here a slide about the data and the D2I2 initiative of the Climate Change Coalition, and which has been first presented in December last year already at the COP25 at a press conference, and of the press conference of the digital innovation community, which is co-led by Tom Baumann and myself as focal points. And here are some of the elements of this digital innovation infrastructure. And my message is that let's harness the potentials of technology for a climate-safe future together, and really let's continue working on these systemic solutions, on these multi-stakeholder solutions, and let's support and invest time and effort in structures like the Climate Change Coalition and ECOS and others, because it's the only way to really have systemic impact. We have no time for siloed and isolated solutions. We need systemic solutions. And we are happy and proud to have the Austrian government as our partners. Just today, we have received the confirmation that the grant is approved and the funding is coming within the next days. And this partnership with the Austrian government is also something that I wanted to highlight, to tell this program, ACE-AT, is being financed by through the International Climate Finance Program of the Republic of Austria. And usually this program would only look at channeling funding to these big international organizations. But here, the responsible people and innovation leaders have recognized that it will not lead to the desired effect of mass mobilization for climate action if they only work with the international public organizations. They need also to engage non-public stakeholders, non-party stakeholders. And something similar is also relevant for the Climate Change Coalition. It is Climate Change Coalition is the right partner also for bigger digital innovation programs that are connected with international organizations and national programs for international climate finance. And we hope that we will find partners who will invest in the work of the Climate Change Coalition, because it's so important for the future of the world.
Excellent job, Miroslav, relating the many points made today by all of the presentations. I lost count. I think it must have been at least a dozen. And then highlighting the issues to be addressed to connect those points in something of an action plan. I would describe it's that can help to coordinate the collaboration among members, partners, stakeholders, so that we do get that systemic solution that you were describing. So I thought that was a great job. Of course, congratulations on the launch of the ACT-AT project. It's very important to advance the knowledge into action. And this is the often non-technical. What really resonates for me in the points that you made is that you highlight the importance of social and cultural innovation in the mix of all of the rest. I often overlooked and underappreciated. I try to state it simply as the transformational change inside us and interpersonally in order to enable the transformational change that we want to see in the world. And we won't achieve that large transformational change without the social, personal, cultural innovations. And I think you're absolutely right there. I see we are now 3 hours and 15 minutes in, so I'll just make some final remarks to conclude our event. Thanks again to all of our speakers for very informative presentations and highlighting the diversity of initiatives that they're all undertaking across digital solutions and the potential synergies to integrate those digital solutions and build the infrastructure necessary to empower climate actions. And as a top priority, as Miroslav just highlighted, mobilizing resources, financial and non-financial resources, to help build this digital infrastructure is a necessary next step in terms of the coalition's role in helping to connect many of the change agents. And so I am happy to quickly announce that the coalition will be launching a fundraising campaign early next year. I think it'll probably launch in January. And so we hope all of you that have joined us through the audience and our partners, friends, will continue to stay in touch. Of course, a lot of information exchange following this event because there's so much happening so quickly just to stay up and to speed on what we're doing, but also to cooperate in that fundraising effort. So please stay involved, and thank you for your time today and joining this third anniversary event. Happy holidays, stay healthy everyone, and looking forward to talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.